and welcome back to another episode of... I forgot the name of the podcast.
Bro, it's been 24 episodes. You think you would have figured it out, but...
I'm sick. That's not my fault.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, God. Hold on. Recompose.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of OHKO, a Pokemon VGC podcast. We're entering in our stretch of not too many Pokemon events going on, but still, we're going to be bringing on some fantastic guests, and of course, one later on, Toler Webb, our Knoxville Regional Champion. But to start things off, you just get us two. My name is Sierra Dawn. I'm one of your co-hosts, joined here by, of course, my co-host, Joe Brown. There's not too many events coming up, but hey, the podcast is still going strong.
Yeah, for sure. We're gonna continue to be releasing weekly episodes and whatnot. And I'd say Mochi Mochi, and I'd be really excited here, but I'm just down the dumps because I just learned that the creator of the Pop-Tarts just died. So I'm a big Pop-Tarts fan, and I feel I'm a little sad. I feel like Pop-Tarts are great, and rest in peace, William Post.
That's definitely a note.
I literally just learned as we were about to record.
On.
I was like, dude,
wow,
just completely sunk my mood. Hopefully we build it back up throughout the rest of the episode.
Is it disrespecting the dead if I say that I don't like Pop-Tarts?
Do you like any frosted
like too
treat
soon?
At all? Like frosted breakfasts, things like like
mini
Pop-Tarts? Okay.
It's like, I don't know, like I like the frosting part of the Pop-Tarts, where like if you're a kid and you don't want the actual jam or the fruit filling or whatever, you lick like all the sprinkles of frosting off and then you eat the little pastry on the outside, and then as soon as you accidentally get a little bit of the jam, it's like game over. It's no longer fun.
But I'm a big Pop-Tart fan. The entire part of it, not just the frosting on top like Sierra. But
no, there's somebody listening out there and they're like, I feel so heard right now. She gets me. She understands. Like, this is not just a core memory for me. I know that.
Yeah. And then there's other people out there like, of course Sierra hates Pop-Tarts. She hates Let's Darkest, she hates movies, she hates Pop-Tarts. Like, what does Sierra like? What's your go-to breakfast?
So I either like to do a high protein Greek yogurt with granola, like a cinnamon granola, as well as cut up strawberries and blueberries. Or if I've prepped it in advance, I've cubed sweet potatoes and I've like pre-baked them and then done like a ground turkey from the farmer's market, and then I cook both of those together, and then I freeze them individual portions, and then I'll heat it up in the morning and throw a couple eggs in there, have them over easy.
Wow, that's a lot of work for breakfast. I'm just a classic Honey Nut Cheerios, put some milk in there, and just start my day. You put in way more work than I do.
Hey.
I respect it.
But you see where this comes at a price is, that is a lot of effort. That requires me having prepped in advance and having groceries in the fridge. So a lot of the time it is a single energy drink that
That's
we
then the real answer.
You just get it depends on the day. It depends on the day.
Oh god.
But
I mean,
if
honestly,
I'm eating food, those are the things I'm eating.
But legit for us though, like on regional days, on the casting days, my breakfast is a Monster energy drink and a couple Airheads like from backstage. Like,
no,
I don't really.
Actually, though, I Uber Eats myself some energy drinks to the hotel. Could have Uber Eats myself breakfast, but no, I Uber Eat about 4 energy drinks to the hotel. And then I drink my energy drink as I get ready. I show up at the event, put my stuff down, say hello to everyone. The first thing I do is go and raid the snack bin. So I normally grab myself like 2 pepperoni sticks. If they have beef jerky, you'll grab myself a thing or 2 of that. I don't like to have anything with nuts, just because if see like Joe Garte at any point during the day, he is severely allergic. I don't want to like drink from the same water bottle as him and then like kill him. So I won't eat anything with nuts. So that's all off the menu for me. So then I go into the bag of chips, get the jalapeno Cheetos, and just sit down and breakfast of champions. Frankly,
No, honestly, I like
It's a-
kind of feel that like shout outs to Crystal, one of Paper Light's great members that always helps restock the supplies. And like I feel like sometimes I don't want to be there when she's there. I don't want her to judge me for my third like energy drink of the day. So like sometimes I'll wait till she's ready, then I'll go grab another drink. She probably doesn't care. She's got a million other things going on. But in my head, I'm like, no, she can't know I've had 3 monsters today. That's how tired I am. But speaking of Joe Sierra, I know he was a little under the weather, and this weekend he was his birthday as well. So how did things go with Joe this weekend?
oh my. Okay. You know that very stereotypical thing in like the movies and the TV shows when like they're on the plane and something's happening and they're like, "Do we have a doctor on board?" They do that in real life, by the way, if you're ever curious. So Joe was having severe pains in his side, and we kind of realized coming back from Knoxville that it might be appendicitis, but we're like, okay, let's get back to New York. Like, we'll see what it is. And it was getting really bad. And he was also having like, it was kind of like he was in so much pain that when he breathed, it was painful too. But it's hard to kind of tell those things apart. And we realistically don't know if it's appendicitis. So realistically, as it stands, it hurts when he breathes because his side, like it's his appendix is not doing so great, right? So I asked for help off the plane so we could see someone on the other end. And they proceed to, do we have a doctor or nurse? And then they bring over an oxygen tank and they're like, it's just procedure. We have to do this. And then Joe's like, I feel fine. I don't need help with this as they do the thing. It was so, oh my gosh. And like, you couldn't even like do that whole part of like you're being on the plane, like, and not have people know about it because we had Pokemon people sitting in front of us. That we were talking with earlier on in the flight. So it was ultimately going to happen. Then he had to go to the hospital and get his appendix removed. So,
Oh wow.
Yeah. And then his birthday was 2 days later. So, yeah, just a casual little emergency before his birthday. No big deal.
But how was the the day, the actual day? What'd you guys do? What'd you celebrate? You know, what'd you have? Is there cake? What type of cake?
Ice cream cake and
Okay.
got his feel put on top of it, actually. So I went with his mom to the place to get the cake, and they're like, do you want a design? And I was like, rip open Google and I was like, put this picture of a feel on the cake. And it was very cute. It was absolutely adorable. But some friends of his ended up coming out from all over. Some people even flew in. So had a little surprise party on the Friday with a couple people nearby, then hung out in the city for the other day. So it was a good time. You know, we had to, like, at some points, like, we'd have to Uber where we could have just walked a few blocks because he, you know, surgery, but it was a lot of fun. It was a good time.
That's great. I mean, you know, I love Joe, so you know, I'm happy he's feeling better. Friends came in for his birthday and stuff, but I think we have some.
Oh, I got the transition. I got the
transition.
transition.
Go for it.
No, I got the transition.
You're
I got
the
the transition.
queen. Go for it.
You know what the best part of the weekend? You know what the best part of the weekend was though, with all of his friends there?
What?
We all got to watch the Dortmund Regional Championships together.
Okay, that's a heck of a segue right there. That was pretty good.
Thank you. I don't know if that's what you were trying to lead into
that's
next.
That's not what I was transitioning to, but that is the topic of conversation.
No.
That is the topic of conversation now. So let's quickly go over Dortmund. I'm not going to sit here and act like and make everyone think I woke up at 4 a.m. to watch all of the rounds. Shout outs to our EU team. They do an incredible job. I saw everything on Twitter and I watched the finals. Shout outs to our EU team. They really do a great job. I think their commentary is really strong over there. And it was an interesting team. Let's go to Florian Temi, I believe. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing the last name wrong. An all German finals with both Florian and Nick. But Blood Moon Ursaluna and Frigraf taking home the crown. And I think am I crazy? Is that now 3 Frigraf titles in the last 4 events, right? Because Toler didn't have it, so that would be Wolf and then Liverpool. And then if you want to extend it to Gio's win, that would be 4 Vergraph regionals in the last 6 regionals we've had in VG. Like, there's kind of a narrative being built there, Sierra.
What can you say? Like, really interesting team. Like, it's gonna be wonky or weird, where it's literally like, this duo that's actually kind of, terrorizing VGC a little bit, just wins it again.
Well,
like,
I'm not saying I'm not saying the team is. I'm not saying the team is unique. I'm saying the narrative that is built from Dortmund, and now having Vergraph in 3 of the last 4 or 4 of the last 6 regionals, having Vergraph go 0 to hero, winning no regionals before Gio did in San Antonio, to now it's like it's expected to be winning every event in 25% of the metagame. Like, I think this is Blood Moon or Luna's first regional title, unless I'm misremembering on that. So at least there is something unique about this Dortmund finals.
I am just saying, like, it started popping off as soon as I said it was good. It's like people heard the podcast and they're like, Sierra's right, and then they just went. But no, it is a strong team. It's always interesting to see kind of where things are landing on the EU end of things, because just worldwide, wherever you are, people play Pokemon just a little bit differently. Because obviously what's good is going to change based off of what people around you are playing. EU seems to be a little bit more Among Us, like, so then other things are going to be like stepping up to kind of take care of that. So
how are they again?
I think
how are they Among Us? So they
I didn't know a word. All right, so I thought that
classic
that kind of sums it up.
Classic Europeans and their Among Us. Ooh.
Ooh la la, Among Us. But you know what I mean, right? Which is then also really funny, because like there was one Among Us in top 8.
Did it have? Wait, let me look. Did it have an Incineroar? Because they're like kind of best friends right now, right? And am I?
Yeah, 3 Incineroar in top 8. 1 Among Us from Eric Rios.
Okay, so yeah, at least Incineroar and Among Us were on the same team there. So, because you know how like a lot of people they put Incineroar and Among Us, they're like, you kind of just have 2 Pokemon when you're starting. Like, if you're going to put one of them on your team builder, very naturally, a lot of times the balanced players, you start with Among Us, then you just throw Incineroar on because you have to, right? But this final specifically, Sierra, was really interesting. One, it went to the game 3, which, we love as casters. That's our favorite thing in the world when games go to game 3. And like the double Germany angle is really cool. This is now 2 events in a row that the what's-his-face Gouging Fire has finished second with James Evans in Knoxville, and now for Nick's team. And there were 2 awesome moments. The first 2 important moments, I should say, in the best of 3. So Nick's King Gambit is running safety goggles. It's not, choice band or black glasses or something like that. And there was a really important turn where basically most of the games, like both players would just like turn 1 Terra Fairy Fluttermane and then just Moonblasting or Dazzling Gleam like right away. And so they trade Terra Fairy Fluttermanes, and then Florian's Ogerpon knocks out Nick's Fluttermane. And then King Gambit goes for the Kowtow Cleave into Terra Fairy Fluttermane, and it just barely lives. So if he was black glasses, that would have knocked out, but since he was safety goggles, it doesn't, and then Fluttermane goes on a tear. And then in game 3, the huge play, because Nick 2 games in a row, both of them Terra Fairy Fluttermane right away turn 1. Florian calls it. Nick turn 1 again, game 3, Terra Fairy Fluttermane, calls the fake out into the ghost type, losing the ghost typing. It fake outs the Fluttermane right away, gets rid of it. It was super hype. So that was a really fun best of 3 to watch in the end. Obviously, it would have been nice if the Gouging Fire got the win over the Blood Moon Ursaluna and Vergraph team. But like overall, that was a really well played finals.
It was a lot of fun. I'm still just like, there's been so much talk about the team, but like you have completely disrespected the Porygon 2 that got second place here. Oh, Gouging Fire would have been cool. You ever see this Porygon 2?
It came in one of the games, and he was just like clicking Terra Blast after Terra Blast was already used. So that's all I'm saying.
more so like the fact, like, I don't know, I feel like Porygon 2, it's kind of in a weird spot. We've gotten to see a little bit more of it, specifically when we're looking at like the Como Porygon 2 Ting Lu team that was piloted at Liverpool that we then saw again with Avery at Knoxville. But it kind of seems a little out of place on a couple of the other teams. So I thought for a pretty conventional team and Nick's team with this Gouge and Fire build that we got to see the Porygon 2 on there.
Yeah, it does. It does. I've definitely turned my opinion around on Porygon 2 because at first I was like, man, it's really suffering from 4 move slot syndrome and like it's not as bulky and Urshifu's everywhere, right? To close combat and all that stuff. And I was like, you can never bring Tri Attack, like you never want it. And Terra Blast is just a better Tri Attack because you don't care about the RNG, right? Like it's a more consistent. You either have a normal same type attack bonus, Terra Blast, or Terra Poison or Terra Fairy, whatever you're running. This version, Nick's version, was the poison type. So it's actually it makes Porygon more flexible than I thought of at first. And that's obviously the huge benefit of terrestrialization in Scarlet and Violet. Like why it's been such a loved mechanic is it adds flexibility to the game. The other thing you would have loved in that final Sierra was the Gouging Fire heat crash, just straight up one shot of Fluttermane from full, like, oh, it was a beautiful thing to watch. So your Gouging Fire, we got to get back on the train here. We got to get back onto our OHKO built Gouging Fire team. Now the Dragon Cheer's unbanned. We got to get back to it.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Your internet's a little wrong, though. Your internet's actually having a field day. The podcast people, when they're listening, they won't know, but you just they have to know what I'm suffering through right now. But I want to talk about like the usage and stuff for this event because you know how like the whole thing we're looking back at the past event was like, ooh, like Ogerpon Wellspring overtook Fluttermane, but it's like, you know, like Slay Girl Slay, you know, they're both in those top spots. But I don't know, like Ogerpon Wellspring ain't loyal. That's it's the single striker Shifu that's actually in the second top usage spot here for Dortmund. Over 50% at that 51. And then knocking Fluttermane down to 49. And Cineroar has also gotten a big boost. Like those Pokemon are actually knocking Fluttermane down into like that next tier, which I think is like quite interesting. Also, like considering all the Wellspring Ogerpon usage, to be fair, it's not at the highest percent, but the Hearthflame Ogerpon on both days actually being able to make the graphic 16% for day 2, I think is actually just really impressive considering the fact that obviously it is a Pokemon split with the Wellspring version, which then has such a large percentage of the field having an Ogerpon of some sort. Just between the two, that's 78%. 70, I guess 7.5.
Right. Yeah. So effectively, let's say there were 40 players in day 2. That would mean like 80% of the players that made day 2 realized that an Ogerpon of their choice was the best solution there. And I think I don't have a problem with that. I think it is great that Ogerpon is viable. One, its base stats are not the full base stat totals of the regular legendaries, so it has some solid stats, but there are strats around it, like Intimidate does actually hurt those Ivy Cudgels if you don't get critical hits. Its speed is strong, but usually people invest in the bulk if you're going to go for Follow Me, so like, it's not an overwhelming Pokemon the way that Fluttermane, when it was at those high percentages, Fluttermane is an overwhelming Pokemon because of its stat distribution. But like, you know, Sierra, remember we talked about the start of Regulation F and we were like, oh, it's so wide open. And the usage and the percentages, like Incineroar is only 33%. And, you know, the 12th spot is 12%. It's so wide open. Now here we are as the meta starts to form and 61%, 51%, 49%, 41%, 41%. Like it's starting to solidify a little more.
I think the conversation is a little bit twisted because if there's a 12% on the usage, that means there's a good chunk at that top end that is stealing up a good chunk of the usage. So I think it was interesting because it's like, and I still feel that this way, that having some of these high usage Pokemon don't necessarily mean you can't have like lower usage Pokemon with them, because it's kind of like, oh, well, you have these top ones and then you can have something that slots in. Which I think that looks similar to our usage now, but I think the biggest difference with our usage now is just that the top Pokemon together are just so good together that it's then kind of difficult at this point to find reason to be running kind of like something else, right? Like, I'm looking at these Pokemon like Wellspring, Ogerpon, Single Striker, Shifu, Fluttermane, Incineroar, Raging Bolt, all of them above 40%. Like, why wouldn't I run them together? And then, oh, would you like a Tornadus? 34%? There's your there's your top line, right? Like, it's kind of like, before you could have your 4, your 5, and your flavor of the day. Now it kind of just feels like, these are the Pokemon you kind of do need to be running.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that we, at first, like, I pulled it up. So, for example, Portland's day 2, the top 6 Pokemon, 51%, 44%, 38, 31, 31, 29. And like I just said, the top 6 in Dortmund, 61, 51, 49, 41, 41, 35. That is that means that those top 6 Pokemon are significantly more. So the top 4 Pokemon of Dortmund are essentially as common as the number 1 Pokemon of Portland was. That's what I'm saying, is that the pool has gotten lesser. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's just naturally how metagames define themselves. And you're right. Why would I not use Raging Bull? Why would I not use Incineroar? Oh, please, sir, I'll have a Tornadus on my team. Thank you very much. Like, the thing to me is the Single Striker Shifu. That's what's crazy to me. Because, like, are we supposed to feel bad that Rapid Strike has just been deleted from the metagame because it was so strong?
Delete them both.
Now Single Strike is on half of the team, so it's not like you solved the problem, right? Unseen Fist is still infuriating. It's just a different form of Urshifu that's dominating right now.
I think it's funny enough because you were like, oh, well, Ogerpon's not as like dominant as Fluttermane was, to where it's problematic, where it's like, I actually am kind of getting to the point with the metagame, because I thought before that Wellspring Ogerpon was pretty healthy. And I'm sure there's going to be people that are way better at me in the game that still argue it is. But the more Ogerpon that I play up against, the Wellspring Mask, Ogerpon specifically, the more kind of unhealthy I feel this Pokemon is. Having the Water Absorb before you Terrasilize, but then kind of forcing things to like kind of pick. You have the Follow Me, which gets around like Amoonguss, which then if you're not Terrasilizing, you have the Water Absorb and you have that Grass typing. Oh, you want to make sure you don't get hit by special defense stuff, like special attacking stuff. All right, let me just Terrasilize and I can get out of some weaknesses, like Bleak Wind now won't hit you for extra damage, etc. Oh, and you get a defense boost, special defense boost. So it's like, I don't know. I feel like the tools that it has, I didn't mind it as much at first, but the more and more I play up against it and kind of just seeing how it's on every single team, it's a lot less fun now.
Yeah, it's kind of I guess some of it could be the shiny new toy aspect, like not being as shiny anymore now that you're used to it and playing with it a lot more, and you have more frustrating scenarios of follow me mind games and, oh, I'm going to Sludge Bomb it because they're Bleak Wind Storm because it's a grass type, and then it terrestrializes out of it. So I can understand. I think it's fair for you to have that opinion that it's not as fun anymore, or it's more frustrating to deal with now than it used to be. If you look at it, it is on 6 of the top 8 teams, Ogerpon Wellspring, in Dortmund, as well as the Hearthflame being on Sergio's team. So you have 7 of 8 slots have an Ogerpon on their team, right? And then Eric Rios with Amoonguss, which is effectively, like, might as well be prehistoric Paradox Grass Ogerpon, because Follow Me and Rage Powder are the same thing.
He just doesn't have a slot because he's running Como Ting Lu. You don't have a slot at that point.
But like,
if he could run all those Pokemon and have it, I'm sure he would have.
I know the frustration of like, oh, it can follow me, or oh, it's weak to grass, never mind. Now it takes special attacks better. The thing is, like, those top teams, the other, like, Raging Bolt also wants to Terastallize. Fluttermane also wants to Terastallize. So it's not like every game Ogerpon is safe to just go Terra Water and get the Spadef boost. So I think there is still some nuance to it. Like, it's not as simple as, like, the old Terra Fairy Choice Specs Fluttermane days. Like, so I still appreciate it more there, but I can understand your perspective that it's starting to feel lame the more it continues to stay in that top slot.
It just kind of feels like it's like for myself, I don't necessarily mind smaller meta games because like there's still sometimes a little room to explore with like your 6th slot, but it feels like the better that Ogerpon is, the less good everything is. Like, I feel like it just enables these same type of Pokemon that makes it kind of difficult to be getting around, because it's not just you have to build around this Fluttermane that you can actually take down pretty easily. Like, you're taking down this Ogerpon, but also this Ogerpon is enabling its partner that you can now not take down any of it. So it's just like, I don't know. I'm not explaining it well, but I feel like it's more unfun than anything else. To deal with Flutter, you had to have your own Flutter, or you had a fast check or like something. Whereas like the Ogerpon, even if you're not immediately threatened by the Ogerpon, the Ogerpon can then make it so you can't threaten its partner, which then can heavily threaten you. And I feel like that leads for less diversity in the format, because realistically it's going to be next to the same type of Pokemon because it's going to enable those best.
Like, the thing I'm thinking of in my head right now is like that meme of it's like the cartoon drawing of the lady on the phone, like in the office, and so it's like Ogerpon Wellspring, and it's like, I'm 61% of the metagame, and she's like, oh, you're so sweet, and then it's like Fluttermane on the bottom, it's like, I'm 61% of the metagame. She's like, hello, human resources. Like, it's the same thing, but depending on which Pokemon is dominating the meta, we feel different about it.
That's so funny. See, I was just like, I didn't feel like with Flutter, you necessarily like, Flutter didn't really enable other Pokemon as much. Flutter enabled itself. You out there and you're like, I need one more Pokemon on a team. Oh, screw it. Let's throw a Fluttermane on there. Fluttermane's always good.
Yeah.
So it's just like, it wasn't, you had to respect the Fluttermane, but realistically, Fluttermane didn't really set up other things. You could do the Icy Wind, but then you're set into this booster speed set, which meant it was doing less damage, so it was kind of taken away from itself. Cool. Ogerpon does enable the other things, so now I'm like, oh, I have to get past the scary Ogerpon and its best friend Raging Bolt. I can't just spore into the partner Pokemon because a Wellspring Ogerpon will take it away. Oh, I can't priority move I can't Thunderclap because, oh, it's going to follow me away. Like, right. Oh, I can't even go for the special attacking moves because it's just going to Terra, and it just kind of gets so annoying in that way, the way it helps everyone else.
Yeah, that even happened in the finals where the King Gambit was really low health, but like, Nick couldn't just like Sucker Punch because Ogerpon was on the field. So like, you could have just completely, redirected it away. But do you want to, I'm just looking at the other teams here, Sierra. Shout outs to Antonio Marco Rodrigo getting top 16 with a Regidrago, Armarouge, Indeedee, Torkoal, regular Ursaluna team. That's kind of hype. You don't see Armarouge and, regular Ursaluna and Regidrago. That's a pretty good performance.
No. The real team to be calling out here, 23rd spot. Michael, I'm probably saying your last name wrong, but it makes me laugh to say it this way. Dublé.
Yeah, like Michael Bublé.
Like Michael Bublé. Yeah. But with Fluttermane, Torkoal, Iron Hands, Farigiraf, Walking Wake, and Venusaur.
This is the team right up. You might want to DM Michael here, because this is a team right up your alley. Like, just ask for the paste.
Oh yeah, it has a Torkoal and a Pokemon, 2 Pokemon that abuse Sun, and it's like, ooh. Also, the fact, my biggest issue with Walking Wake is the Life Orb set. It just doesn't do enough damage. It's like, I'm hitting for realistic strong moves, and it isn't doing anything. Even with the Photosynthesis boost sometimes. Whereas Michael's running it with Choice Specs. So, of course, you're locked, but honestly, a Choice Specs, Hydro Steam, and Sun, that is damage. There is actually, like, the only thing that, like, hard walls that, unfortunately, is any team with a Wellspring Ogerpon on it.
Yeah,
but then if, like, But realistically, you can one-shot a non-terrestrialized with Draco Meteor in the sun, and I'd be curious to see what choice specs would do, and if you're running a Torkoal set that had like Helping Hand or something on it. But I mean, you have Fergraph that does have Helping Hand.
I do like the Terra Steel on the Walking Wake instead of, we usually like Terra Fire or Terra Water, Terra Fairy also to win the Draco Meteor mirrors, right? So the Terra Steel with Terra Blast is a pretty cool version of it. So yeah, shouts to Michael Dublé. We're just gonna hope that's how he says it.
Also, Terra Stellar,
you could literally bring
Fluttermane.
this team to a PC. Like if you brought this 6 to a PC or an MSS, I wouldn't have known that like you ripped it from another player. Like this looks like a Sierra original.
Nice, I think.
That is a compliment. It's got Fergraph. It's got Torkoal. It's got a Grass, Sun Abuser, Walking Wake. Like this is right up your alley.
You know my biggest issue with the team though? Look over this for half a second. No. Look over this for half a second. Specifically, the left side of the Pokepaste. I'll give you a second to try and figure out my biggest issue with this team.
The left side of the Pokepaste. So like.
Maybe look at the little Torkoal boy.
Is he not shiny? Is that the issue?
Maybe look at the Torkoal.
Is it because he's not shiny?
He doesn't have fissure.
Oh, okay.
This is the the basic Torkoal set, the not based one. The charcoal with eruption, heat wave, and earth power.
Yeah,
it's no fun.
It can't be Sierra Torkoal if it's not shiny, and 2 if it doesn't have fissure.
Yeah, I do have the shiny one. Big Mama, the shiny Torkoal.
Now, I do have a question for you before we move on to our guest here, because you are Canadian. Did you watch the Super Bowl?
No.
No? No, you had no interest. Were you with any Americans at the time? They weren't interested either?
Yeah. And they weren't.
This is a shock to me. This is America's thing, the Super Bowl. Like, and you were just like, oh, let me dabble in this. Let me learn about American culture while I'm here. And you were just like, nah, couldn't be cared. Couldn't be bothered.
So, I'll say it loud and proud, because this is a Pokemon podcast. So it's not like it's a sports podcast where, like, I might get, like, for this one. But, like, realistically, out of majority of sports, football is, like, one of the worst. Like, American football.
Oh, my God.
Like, majority of the game is breaks. It fuels into the whole capitalism thing with the fact that it's just ads all the time. And it's like, when they are playing, most of it's just pausing and talking. So it's like, oh, let's strategize for 10 minutes about this 10-second play, which I feel like takes a lot of athleticism out of all of it. And it's just like, all right, like, it's no fun. Like, play rugby, play, like, real football, like, play curling if you want to sit there and strategize forever before doing one move. Like, it's curling the same thing at that point. Curling is lit. I love curling.
Yeah, I edited a lot of curling highlights during the Winter Olympics, and I ended up learning how to play the game and like ended up having a lot of fun watching it. But it's no football. Sorry, like you didn't watch for Usher. You didn't watch for like the fun commercials. There's some Beyonce had a really funny commercial.
But,
you didn't.
But you know what you're saying there is you're watching for every reason except for football.
No. When I'm watching curling, for football. I'm trying to get you invested in the Super Bowl.
I don't need to sit there and look at the ads or anything else. I don't have to be like, oh, well, maybe they'll have funny Canadian casters to listen to. It's like, no, I can sit there and just watch the sport for what it is, no matter what any other outside factor is. And if the best part of the Super Bowl is like some musical acts or like the commercials, the fact that it's like, oh my God, the Super Bowl commercials, congratulations, you enjoyed getting like advertised to. Like, congrats. I don't know what you want.
You enjoyed getting advertised to? Wow.
Like, I don't know. Like, to each their own, right? Like, to people that enjoy that stuff, you know what? It is what it is. I feel like a lot of it is, like, you grow up with it as well, so it's, like, a thing, whereas, like, I didn't grow up with it, so it's, like, I grew up watching...
You have a Canadian football league. They play American football in Canada.
But, like, if we're watching stuff, like, we're watching hockey, We're watching something that's, like, all, like, about the sport, Like, that's what I grew up with, and... Like, that's what I like watching in sports.
Disappointed. I thought because you were in America, I thought whatever Americans you were with at the time would be invested in the Super Bowl, but I guess not.
They didn't even care.
All right. Well, now that we settled that part, we do have to answer a question from the last week, which one of our commenters pointed out. So, sometimes we use a little inside baseball lingo and we don't explain everything on the production end for everything. So usually we try to say it, but if we forget, we apologize. And always remember that every episode is somebody's first episode of the podcast, right? So just because we explain what an SME is in a prior role episode doesn't mean we don't explain it again. So for the people who didn't understand some of our production lingo, SME is subject matter expert. You work with the production team to let them know which player is likely to win. Like player 1 is 1 turn from winning because it's 4-1 and they're going to forfeit. And you also handle all the open team sheet information. Boom, got that. Subject matter expert. The other one is a lower third, and I think Sierra, why don't you handle what a lower third is, or a lower in general?
It is the text that pops up in the lower third of the screen to normally add context that may not be given otherwise. So it would be like if there was a pop-up that was like words on it,
You could have chose any word and you chose words.
I couldn't think of any word.
Like Aaron Trailers on the screen, right?
Okay.
Aaron Trailers on the screen.
But
and then on the lower third of the screen, it says connoisseur of various ice cream flavors. That's the lower
it's stuff
third.
that is added like separately, like over top. But yeah, just little like boxes that will provide more information. So they can sometimes include like titles or just like facts or like anything else that might be missed. So yeah, and yeah, we try and explain things. But yeah, we get carried away sometimes. We forget,
especially last episode, Sierra, because we had old listeners who know what SME or lower third is, but we did kind of have a lot of new listeners last week. I don't know if you realized it or not. So we had some new OHKO fans joining the family.
Yeah, so it happens with the world champ difference on the podcast. But if you tuned in last week for the first time, and you're here again now, thank you. I appreciate it. So that episode is a lot of fun, but of course, especially with the break that is going on forward, want to be kind of continuing that tradition of bringing on people to be talking to. And we're going to keep it along with our world champ moments here and bring on our 2012 senior world champion, Toler Webb, also 2024 Knoxville regional champion. So we'll be back in half a second to talk with him. And we are back, and we have Mr. Knoxville champion here, Toler Webb, also world champion. We have back-to-back world champions on the podcast. That's super cool. But thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing tonight?
I'm okay. It's been a pleasant week, pleasant day today. I'm in a good mood.
So, always glad to hear. Always glad to hear. And Joanne's just not okay. First off, Joanne, are you okay? You're just nodding up a storm over there.
Listen, I am super excited. I have legitimately been a massive Toler Webb fan since 2016, 2017. He's always been one of the nicest people in the whole community. Like, no matter what the event is, no matter what his record is, he'll always come up and say hi to me and stuff. So like, I'm just living in the moment, Sierra. I am appreciating the now that I get to be here in this podcast with Toler.
Toler, do you expect to just be showered with compliments from Joe Brown from the get-go?
Joe, I watch back a lot of the event footage sometimes, and Joe is really nice to me whenever I'm on stream, and I always appreciate that. And I think Joe spreading so much love for so many players, I think he's bound to get it back someday, and I hope he continues to get it back all the time.
Oh, thank you.
It's gonna be absolutely brutal. Like the one podcast episode, somebody comes on, and the first thing Joe Brown does is not fawn over them. Not even he just like everyone else. He's like, "Oh my gosh, Toler is so nice. One of the nicest people. I'm such a fan. Oh my gosh, Justin Burns. I'm president of the fan club. We have somebody on," and then Joe Brown's like, "Hey, how are you doing?" You just know, right?
Just like, I crashed my car today. I would rather do anything else right now.
it's like I'm not insulting them, but because I'm not like applauding them, it is an insult in comparison.
Right.
So, oh god, now I got to be worried about that.
No, I'm a
Yes,
Joe Brown fan. You beat me at what was it, Memphis Regionals?
yeah, that was
And I was
honestly that was one of the highlights of my life because you were, world champion, national champion, and I won that game. I forget what it was. I just know I had a low in Marowak and like I called a Tapu Koko Thunderbolt or something, and I was like, oh yes, I won. And
I believe
you were super nice to me. Like you weren't salty about a loss or anything. Like because I've never really played like world champions like that at a regional level. So, like, you were just the nicest human being to me after that game. Like, you didn't make me feel bad for being a bad player that beat a good player. It's like I said, ever since then, like, I've just been a massive Toler fan.
that it's so funny, right? Because like one of the things I really struggle with is I care a lot about how well I play games, and like it feels like it's hit or miss as far as like how well I respond to losses, especially way
You were
back,
super nice,
like, especially in like 2017. Like it's very like, man, was I like depressed and like did I storm off or did I shake his hand and say good game?
No,
I
it
would
was
never
good.
try to
Okay.
go after someone. But,
So let's go.
but I'm
Let's
glad
go back
that's how that
to
happened.
let's go back to those olden days, right? Let's go back to even before
Okay.
2017. Let's get into the meat and bones of this conversation here, Sierra and Toler. We go back to your world championship, right, in the seniors division. It's a whole different world now. We understand 10, 11 years later. What were your thoughts when you saw the narrative on the broadcast and like kind of how we were presenting in the finals against James, that you were two senior world champions when you're very much not a teenager anymore and he's also a full-blown adult at this point? Like, did you think it was a neat concept, or like, guys, that was so long ago it doesn't even matter?
Oh yeah, I think Sierra told you what my initial reaction was, right?
Yeah.
Which was, and this was on the last episode of OHKO, I think, where I was like, well, coming of age? What are you talking about? Like, I've been coming of age for the past 12 years since I won Worlds, and it really has been that long. I think there's definitely something there because I think like it is senior world champions. I think a lot of them kind of relate to this. Like, a lot of people will look at that and be like, well, I mean, come on, it's seniors. Like, I was building a little bit before Charlotte and before Knoxville with Owen Murphy, who was actually, you might remember, the NAIC champion from last year. And you might remember because you guys were on broadcast, but not many other people do. I mentioned this name and like, who? Like, so it's like it's sort of this common theme among senior world champions, or like people that perform really well in seniors, that like, well, I mean, seniors doesn't really matter, or like I don't even know who that person is, all that sort of stuff. So I think that's almost the more interesting side of it, right? Is like, look at these two people whose apparent biggest accomplishment was in the irrelevant division, as a lot of people sometimes would think of it. And back in the day, it really would say that. Look at these two people that have this accomplishment like way back in this relevant division, and then see what they're doing now, like see that they're competing, that sort of thing. Like, I guess like prove that it's not a fluke is not really the real thing, because anyone who does really well in seniors, we see it with like Robbie Scheij and that sort of stuff, like or those sorts of players, like anyone who does really well in seniors is definitely competing with masters. But there's a sense in which you're trying to like still fight that reputation a little bit in a way.
It's definitely like, because I don't really think it's necessarily changed too much from when you won Worlds in comparison to how it is now, with like there just not being enough of a light shed on these players and anything that they're capable of doing. I mean, we get to see the finals at internationals and we see the finals at Worlds, and beyond that, there's nothing. Like, something we just started doing for the broadcast, if we do have the resources at the time, is going and interviewing like the junior regional champion and the senior regional champion as well. Have it as a little interview we can show. And I felt like so bad because we don't get to follow this division very much, right? Whatsoever. None of the matches are broadcasted. There's not really too much information. And I was talking to the one junior champion. I was like, oh, do you compete a lot? And he's like won 5 regionals.
Yeah.
And people can say what they want about like accomplishments not mattering in younger age divisions. But the thing is like, I still think that there's an accomplishment there. But the fact that too, like this kid can win 5 regionals, then I'm just like, I don't know who you are, bud. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I feel so bad about that, you know?
Yeah, no, I felt the same way. It's like I actually got paired against Owen at a Georgia local, speaking of Owen again, and I didn't know who he was. And I was like, dang, I am my own worst enemy. Like, I'm sitting here not knowing the names of the good senior players. And then he beat me, and then I knew his name.
I'm not forgetting after that one.
Never forget it.
I did my classic, like, oh, I misplayed. Like, Toler, I'm not sure about that one. So it's definitely real. And back in my day, my senior division, I was in the same senior classes, like, you can call it a class. But I was in the same group of seniors as like Pokey Alex and Aaron Zhang, and like I was playing in seniors at the same time that Aaron Trailer was playing, and OHKO, and like all of these people that people know now. Like Aaron brought Wolf's 2012 Worlds team to his 2012 Worlds. A lot of names that people are familiar with. Gavin Michaels was in my senior class, Cedric Bernier. We had a lot of really strong players at the time. And it was a hard tournament because there were a lot of people that were really, or it was always a hard tournament because there were a lot of people that were really invested. But like, I don't know, I don't think people realized like that seniors back then was also bigger because I guess venue fees were free.
Yeah.
You're not paying $70 to go to an event. Your parents are like, oh yeah, we'll actually take you. That's
the real travesty, man, is like the senior division tournaments and junior division tournaments are really small compared to what they were when they started, because we had 100, 200 player tournaments back then. Yeah, and it doesn't happen anymore. And I wish it did because it was such a positive force in my life. When I was 14, 15. Yeah.
I think
hopefully we can
so
start
tough.
like going in that direction.
Well, I was going to say, it's so tough for a family to justify, like, let's say you're a mom and dad and you have 3 kids, like, it's tough to justify spending $210 on just, well, more than probably like $250, right? Because you need spectator passes too, to just enter the building and play it, let alone how your kid performs, right? So even in the Masters division, where people kind of feel like not wanting to pay that that entry fee, it's like obviously it's even worse for kids with no income or teenagers with maybe a small part-time job or something like that. But like, I think for me, the interesting aspect of, because we talked about it on the podcast last week, Sarah and I, because I was the one backstage, like kind of angling the senior world champion angle, is it wasn't necessarily about your guys' ages. You talk about your class with all of those great seniors players that were at the same time, and you were the one that came out victorious, right? So I think the fact that you and James are kind of in this elite, like, VIP club together, as it's something that you only have a finite amount of time, right? Like theoretically, if you spend 50 years playing VGC in the Masters division, fingers crossed you can get that world championship over 50 years. But in seniors, there is only a finite slice of your VGC career that you can actually accomplish that goal. So I just think, regardless of age, because you guys are much older now than when you won those, that concept of like, you caught lightning in a bottle at 14 when Aaron Trailer and Cedric and all the other players couldn't. I think that's a pretty cool deal.
Yeah, it's good and it's bad, actually. And for me, I'll probably be, I know Wolf said on the last podcast, like, he was going to be long-winded with all his answers, but this is baby stuff. Like, I can talk forever. So just stop me if I'm saying too much, right?
No, go for it.
But, and I'm not as interesting to listen to as Wolf.
No, I won't say that.
But, so it's good and it's bad, right? Because you have this moment in your life where you're like, oh, okay, I've done this incredible thing. And it's genuinely one of the best days of my life, right? Because it felt like this huge achievement, and like so many things went well in the moment. And like during finals, it was like I could sort of see the game splayed out before me, like pieces on a chessboard, and I could just move them at will, and I knew what was going to happen. And like I was going for random like ego plays. Like neither of you have probably watched the 2012 Seniors World Finals, but I like went for a big helping hand overheat on a Swampert and knocked it out in game 2, and even knowing it wasn't going to win me the game, and then won game 3 anyway. Like, there was a bunch of stuff like that where it's like this moment of like serene clarity involved in that day that made it so nice. But for the rest of your life after that moment, especially after a world championship, right? you associate everything with that day so positively. And it feels like every moment you live after that, inside or outside of Pokemon, is comparing to that sequence of events on that one day. And I see it happen a lot. Like I've talked with Justin Tang about it. I've talked with like other Siege players about it. Like this burden of expectation that you have is like, oh, on this one moment, this one day, I was good enough, where I was the best, maybe. And then who are you in the rest of your life, right? Like you go back to school, especially in seniors, right? You go back to school, you get bullied, like like you're not special anymore. Where like people make fun of you. Like I got laughed at all the time because I played Pokemon. Like you have to go and live with being something other than the world champion of competitive Pokemon for a lot of the time, and you doubt yourself a lot because of that, I guess.
I want to talk about the title of world champion because I've always been intrigued with someone who's earned it way back in a different age division about how you feel about that title of just being so strongly associated to you now. Because that was 12 years ago. That was a different division.
Yeah.
And like you've won different events since then. You've recently just won Knoxville. But being a world champion, like regional champion, world champion, you know, it's kind of like every other factor goes away around that. It's just you're a world champion. Do you ever feel sometimes like there is that title that maybe you don't want to be quite so associated with, or are you completely fine with kind of being known as that, like the world champion from 12 years back?
Yeah, 12 years is forever ago, right? And the game was completely different then. I don't value that tournament the same way that I value some. Like the tournament that I'm still the most proud of probably is 2015 Nationals, which everyone forgets. Well, everyone forgets how great I am. I shouldn't say that.
Joe Brown
like,
doesn't forget. Don't worry.
No,
He
like,
talks about the Nats run.
people talk about Worlds a lot more than they talk about Nationals, and for me, Nationals was the more important tournament, right? Because I made like this harsh meta call. I played a really difficult team with the Polytoad Gardevoir stuff. For a tournament that was, 528 or 520 people or something. And for me, that was a big accomplishment because it was in Masters and it was after the game had developed for a little bit of time, and it demonstrated some of the skills that I'd spent, 3 years since Worlds developing. So it's like, yeah, to your point, Sierra, this idea like, oh, the world champion title kind of looming over you, or people like valuing it more. Like I want some of my other achievements to be bigger than just that world champion title, but I also can't walk away from it because it's part of who I am too,
Yeah.
I think that it's not surprising to hear you say that you value that Nats performance, and like kind of in its significance more than Worlds. And I was wondering going into this, if you compare, the World Championship Finals and the U.S. National Finals and your two regional championship finals matches, like those isolated best of threes, what was the most intense set that you've played in your career, either one that you lost or out of those, championship fulfilling moments, what was the most difficult one to win?
I have only been in finals 5 times, so I'm pretty bad at getting to finals over my career. But in the tournaments where I make finals, I've won 4 out of 5. So that's Worlds 2012. There's a Philadelphia like 2013 or in the 2013 season, because I brought Ben Irons' Rain team to that tournament. I remember that, and I lost to Iron Ball Tyranitar under speeding my Mungus.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
right. Closed.
That's brutal.
Closed.
That's brutal.
Yeah, I clicked Spore, and it was in TR. I clicked Spore, he clicked Fling, and my Amoonguss was knocked out.
Wow.
Yikes.
Yeah, or something like that. And then I didn't.
Old
figure it out the
VGC's
second year.
wild.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Well, you could put other Amoonguss to sleep, too. That was pretty crazy. But so there was 2012 Worlds, there was that Philadelphia Regional Finals, and then we skipped forward to 2015 Nationals, and then 2016 Regional Finals, and then Knoxville. And I don't think any of those finals were especially hard. which is not to say, like, not to disrespect any of my opponents or anything like that, but at 2012 Worlds, I had a Ludicolo and their entire strategy was built around Swampert. Like Pokemon, I guess, right? In Philadelphia, okay, it was hard, and I lost. Because I didn't figure out, I was playing a rain team, and I lost to Iron Ball Tyranitar. There you go. So fair, that one was hard. And I didn't figure it out, and it was kind of pointless. 2015 Nationals, I had a Politoed, they had a Heatran and a Landorus, and I lost a game to Swagger. Okay. And I'm sure like you can, you know, make that more complex and analyze it, and there were a lot of reads and decisions that could be made. Like, people watching back might notice that I don't like to bring a Mungus. That's because I played a 5-mon team at 2015 Nationals, so I didn't know how to bring a Mungus.
Oh no.
I genuinely, like, I brought a Mungus to like 3 of the sets in that tournament because I didn't know what to do with it. But like, I had a Politoed and they had 2 Arctics. And 2016, I was against Yveltal and I was playing Xerneas. And 8 years later, which is a huge gap, by the way. I was fully convinced I was never winning another regional because it had been so long. But I think the game 1 against James Evans, I thought I was going to lose because I made the like 4-turn sequence of collective misplays, like trying to get Golden Go in the right spot for no reason because he had Taunt Rillaboom. But then game 2 was like, he just didn't bring the right Pokemon, right?
Yeah.
And then it was just like, I was feeling very calm, and I could see the sequence like 5 or 6 turns out is like, okay, you're going to lose to Terra Fairy Raging Bolt in the end here, as long as I hit my attacks. I mean, it's like, it feels anticlimactic in a way. I think finally winding my way to your original question, right? And that's not to say James is a bad player or anything, right? Like, I had the right position and I felt calm and I could see what was going to happen. Those are the tournaments I tend to win, is like when I can see the game clearly enough to understand how the sequences play out and I have good matchups. But I think the things that stand out to me are like, for example, Avery at Knoxville is a great example of a matchup where I was 100% favored. 100% favored. Essentially unlosable. I didn't lose a game in that matchup the entire tournament, but every one of the 4 games we played, she pushed me like all the way to the limit of like how well I needed to play the matchup, how perfect I needed to be to get the win. And then it's like those kinds of matchups, you kind of get scared because your opponent is demonstrating to you that no matter like how well you understand a matchup, or like no matter how well you understand the game strategically, someone can still outthink you in the moment, and you can lose. And that's like, it's freaky because it feels very human at that moment, you know? So yeah, I guess that's the best answer to the question I have, because like all my finals matches are, they don't feel big to me in my head.
Oh, you keep talking about how like in these matches that you felt like confident in, with the matches that were easier, that you always thought that there was like a sequence that you're thinking like this 5-6 turns ahead, and that you from the get-go kind of know more so how it is. Do you feel that's kind of something like when you regularly play, that's just how you look at it, and all of a sudden if you don't see that sequence, is maybe those games that you struggle a bit more, that's where you're taking the losses? Or is it just something more about these bigger matches where you have that clarity that you can recall back to it?
Yeah, I think that's something that's kind of new for me now. Like, I think especially in closed sheet formats, and especially when I was younger, right? I wasn't as into planning at that point. I would play a lot for specific turns, and then having a good matchup was what made it more likely for me to win, like any individual turn. But something I've worked on a lot, and really, I mean, like Wolf is kind of my inspiration on this, is like understanding the game to a level where I can sort of see how things are going to play out well in advance, and then make decisions based on that. So it's something that I've noticed I'm very good at in practice, but I think I said this on like on the interviews for Knoxville. I've dealt a lot with my own fears and anxieties about my play and myself as a player, and who I'm supposed to be. And so I for the past year, or well, I guess half a year, because this is a newish skill for me, I've had these situations where in practice against like Yotam or Justin Karras or some of the people I practice against, like I can see these sequences be like, no, you lose in 5 turns here. And they're like, why? And they're like, and they're like, oh man. And I'm like, why can't I do this in tournament? And like, So it's a newish thing for me, but it's like only in the other finals matches basically did I have like the perfect clarity or the level of clarity that I would need to have in tournament to even approximate that sort of thing. So yeah, I don't think it's wildly consistent. I especially don't think it's consistent if I don't sleep well or like I'm super anxious. Like, but when it works, it feels great. You know.
Yeah.
Now I don't want to
Cool.
bring the mood down, Sierra, but we
Oh.
do have to call Toler a little bit of call him out on his betrayal of the size spam community. Because if you look at Charlotte, you Justin, that whole crew, you became a hero to the simpletons. Okay, the people that just click helping hand expanding force. They were erecting statues in your honor after Charlotte, and then Knoxville comes up and not a crown made of iron in sight on the team. What happened?
Yeah, back to practical matters. So I said this after Knox to some of the people I was building with. It's like, man, it felt like every single one of those games I was swindling people. Like, and I think this is something that people actually, you learn with experience how to swindle people as a Pokemon player. So I was doing stuff like, oh, I'm going to bring Flutter Ogerpon in game 1, and you're going to lead your Urshifu and your Incineroar, and look at that. I have two great Dazzling Gleam targets. I'll just switch it in DD and Terra Fairy Dazzling Gleam. And then you'll die to Rocky Helmet, not even knowing I had my Indeedee. And wow, aren't I so good at the game? And then game 2, I'm going to lead Iron Crown and DD and click Helping Hand Expanding Force into your Tornadus and Raging Bolt. You're going to faint. And it's like, that sort of like dumb trickery is not stable to do against people that are good at the game. And I wanted to avoid that to the extent possible. And the other thing was like, I was running into a lot of bad matchups at Charlotte where I needed to swindle people. It needed to work. Where I needed to like catch them on lead or like fool them on a read. And my thought was like, man, like if this is going to have good matchups at Knoxville, then I can bring it. But I really felt like at Charlotte, things just kind of went my way in ways that I almost couldn't entirely perceive. And the only game that I even felt prepared or like my work had paid off in, like I had calculated well or like played a really good game of Pokemon was against Riley Factura. And that was a good matchup-ish. So, man, you know.
Yeah, you had mentioned at Charlotte that you'd been scamming people.
Yeah.
All like it was. I wasn't too surprised to see a team change going on forward here, but there is a couple of questions that our community doesn't know who was coming on the podcast, but we had them throw some questions
them.
And actually.
Yeah, well, we did. It's not quite a swindle. It's more of a con, you know.
a little con. But they actually had some really good questions, which I wanted to ask. Especially too, if you're talking about your Charlotte run and the fact that like things kind of going your way. There's this question of what stretch of a run do you consider the hardest? Day 1 Swiss, day 2 Swiss, or bracket? And I'd love to know that comparison with a team like your Charlotte team, where a little scammy in comparison to something at Knoxville that looks like a little bit more consistent, a little bit more built for like a long tournament run.
Yeah, I mean, and to be clear, like any high level player is going to be trying to incorporate micro scams, if you will, into their play, especially between like different team previews. Like you could take that one on broadcast. Like, oh, there's another micro scam. They led the fire pod into the water pod and clicked Terrifier Cudgel turn 1 for no reason. Yeah, I think the thing that I've struggled with the most, and this is a personal thing, because of all of my anxiety around the game and because of how much I respect all the other players I'm playing with, I have really struggled in day 2s. And really, day 2 Swiss has been enough. Like, the first time I see a name that I, like, recognize has been doing well, is having a great tournament, like, my heart rate goes up. I'm scared. And dealing with the challenge that puts on me as a person, not just as a player, is... That's a big difficulty. So I think like the difficulty spike between day 1 and day 2 is a huge factor, and being able to adapt between those two things is one of the biggest challenges that Pokemon has for you right now. But like by the time you're playing in top 8, like the gears are greased, like the steam engine's cooking, like you're thinking the right way, and then it's just a question of like who's going to play the better Pokemon. But getting to that level of like in the zone, this is really hard, and there are a few players that really inspire me by how they do that.
It's so interesting because like you are one of these names. You know,
you gotta
like
believe in
looking
yourself.
back at the accomplishments, like you are one of these names. So it's so interesting to hear you talk about like when you're going up against a name, because you're one of the people that if I sat down and looked at like, oh, who am I paired up against, and I saw Toler Webb, I'd be like, ugh, why? You know?
I think everyone who loves the game, including the people who play it, feel that way because, or at least I hope they do, right? Because we all really respect each other and the work that we put in, and we like. Let's take Sohaib for example. Like I played him twice at Charlotte. I was scared both times we paired. I see the work he puts in because like even tangentially, right? Like I'm in practice groups that he's involved with, or like I'm in team tournaments that he's like community tournaments that he's involved with, and I see what he does, and I see the games he plays, and I see how he analyzes. Like I see how hard this guy works, right? And when you know that about the other players, you can't help but be a little afraid because you're going up against all of that effort that they're putting in. And everyone who plays this game at a high level, at the very least, thinks about it a lot. So it's freaky. No matter what my name is, right? Because when I sit down, my name is invisible to me. I don't care about Toler Webb, right? Oh, I pulled out my headphones. One sec.
He really just said, I do not care about Toler Webb, and just rips them off. Like, no chill.
But like, it doesn't matter who I am. I have to deal with the thing in front of me, and the thing in front of me is someone who works really hard and is really good at the game. And, like, it doesn't help to have an equivalently large name a lot of the time.
I do think
is there someone that you're not as nervous? Like, I want to get this in here before we change topics.
Finish that one. Yep.
Yeah. Is there anyone more so instead of being nervous to go up against that you're like excited? Anyone that you've like faced off against before? Someone that like, I don't know. There's kind of like that different level because sometimes people are really excited to go up to someone because they love the type of game they play. You know. And all the hardball questions on you. Sorry, bud.
No, this is great. I hope I'm answering in a way that's like useful to people and not just self-aggrandizing, that sort of thing.
Oh.
Everybody's loving it. I hear the comment. I see the YouTube comments already. You know,
I'm the greatest of all time and the worst of all time. I think I had a lot of fun, although he absolutely destroyed me. I had a lot of fun playing against Tang at Knoxville. So that's the first set that came to mind. That was, I think, round 13 of Swiss. I was playing right after I basically secured cut against Ji Chun Woo, who also played a great game. Tang was on effectively the same team. And because I knew I was locked for cut, it was just like, I've played Tang on ladder like 8 times. He's beaten me every time. I'm probably going to lose this game. The matchup is terrible. I'm gonna have fun, right? So I think it's fun to play someone like that who like I know how passionate Tang is about the game, and I'm more involved in his prep than I am with some of the other people. So it's not as mysterious for me. Like I don't know everything he's doing. He doesn't tell me everything that he like. But we're in one of the same team building servers. So like I think people that I know, it helps. Like if I played against Karis, I think it would be a really fun set, although I would be stressed to play a friend. And whenever I play Wolf, I get super nervous and super excited, but I think it's still always a pleasure because it's like I know he's going to respect the game completely that we're playing and play it very, very well. And I can't help but love people that do that. It's been a while since I played Aaron Trailer. I think I'd feel the same way about that as well.
Yeah.
I did just wanted to piggyback on your day 2 point of like that being the hardest for you so far, like a part of the tournament, because I think you make perfect sense because at that point, at the start of day 2, it doesn't matter who is a name right? Because you had to prove over those first 9 rounds to get at minimum 7, 8, 9 wins that, like, at that point your team is consistent enough to win best of threes, at least 7 of the 9 of them. And typically they are strong players like Sohaib or Wolf or Aaron that you're talking about. So they have consistent performances. So, you know, when you go into those day 2 matches, I guess I can understand why that is more difficult than top 8, because top 8 you've already kind of broke through. Like, you can relax. Like, you have accomplished, you know, you made it through those 14 grueling rounds of Swiss. And the first 9 rounds, someone might have, you know, in the wrong, like, Ogrepon form on their team sheet, and they lose lose a game for that, or something
that
like
happen,
yeah.
yeah.
Like, I'm just saying, like, day 1 leads itself to having more quote unquote easier victories than the day 2. So do you feel like now going forward with Charlotte top 8 and Knoxville with the championship, your next regional or your next IC, whatever it is, if you make it to day 2, will you feel more confident going into it now because you've shown, you know, back to back here, like, I don't have to be so worried about my day 2 opponents?
I don't think that's right. Yeah, I don't think that's right at all. It is because I was so, like, I mean, like, of course, the difference here, Joe, right, is you're right about one part of it, right? Which is I don't need to be afraid, right? I think that is a really important bit that I've had to learn the hard way over and over and over again over the past year. But at the same time, it is because I give these players all this respect and because I put so much pressure on the day 2 situation and, like, all that sort of stuff that I could perform. And I don't think it gets any easier, right? Like, having one good day does not mean you have infinite good days. And Pokemon is a game about doing incredible things over the long term rather than about having one flash in the pan. At least the way we play it in the West, I guess. In Japan, right, you have a good GC run into a good Japan Nats run, you're going.
You're good. You're good.
Yeah, you're good. It's like 3 tournaments. But I think the marks of the best players are, like, okay, how do you go beyond one tournament? And so if I hit day 2 again, like, maybe I'll feel like more of a threat. Maybe I'll get in my own head and, like, be, you know, like, arrogant or something about it, and, like, have to deal with that side of how my brain wants to handle things. Because it's all just however my brain wants to avoid feeling fear or, like, avoid doing things that are uncomfortable. But at the same time, like, I don't think it changes at all, right? It's still phenomenally hard. The players are still phenomenally good. I still need to be on my A game for every game that I play. And I guess, like, my only hope is that I can do justice to the game every time I'm playing it, you know?
Yeah. So then, with where your brain's at, because everyone's pretty split kind of on this, like, when you go into an event, how do you feel about, like, your overall chances of just, like, winning the event? Like, Knoxville, obviously you won. Was there at any point during the run where you're like, wow, okay, like, I am having a good day, like, this team is doing good, like, I can be winning this? Or is it like every tournament is just like a game by game sort of thing and just seeing how far that goes along?
Yeah, I had a couple. Knoxville was kind of eerie because I had a few friends that were like, in day 1 after I won, like, round 4 or something, they were like, "It's a Toler Webb tournament. You're gonna win this one." I'm like, why would you ever think that? Like, I have successively failed in day 2s every time I've made one, aside from Charlotte. Like, why do you think this is the one where I'm gonna, like, not only make day 2 but win the event? But I had, like, Yotam said that, Siddharth Singhal said that. My girlfriend was like, this seems pretty good, actually. Like, why is this different than all of the other 4-0 starts I've had? But for my taste, right, I think the only way to play the game is in fact one game at a time, right? And if you get too focused on how you want things to end, you stop playing the game in front of you as well. And so that's, like, my internal narrative, and the narrative I'm striving for every time is, like, not just play the game in front of me, but, like, be fully present in every game I play. Because I tend to play teams that are so hard to play. Like, the Crown team at Knoxville was really hard to play, and a lot of people were messaging me that, like, were, like, new to the game, like, oh, Crown's so cool, I'm gonna play this. Like, you do not understand the Scarf Urshifu pivot sequences that we have to go through with this dumb crown team. Like,
no,
it's
I just
really
have to
hard.
say, because I played your team at Liverpool, and
Yeah.
I got my butt handed to me, like, no, like, mercy. And, like, I had a sun
It was
variation to the
unforgiving.
team. I didn't work out. I was talking to Yotam about it, and I switched it, like, midnight the night before, and I got so instantly humbled, it wasn't even funny. Like, it was brutal.
That team is cruel. It is mean, because if you make a mistake on turn 2, you lose the game. Like, they can be tiny mistakes, right? Like, oh, I clicked Horn Leech instead of Ivy Cudgel with my, oh no, right? Like, so
It was fun.
it's fun. It's fun to play. Yeah, right. I tend to play teams that are very hard because that's how I enjoy playing the game, and I enjoy demanding that kind of accuracy from myself, and I find that it gives me a lot of flexibility. So I often put myself in a situation where it's either be present in every game I'm playing and be totally focused on that game and nothing else, or die, essentially. And that was true of like 2015. That was kind of true of 2012. I was like going for reads every other turn. There are not many teams that I've played where I feel like I'm on easy mode the whole time.
Do you think that's like part of why it took so long to get another regional win? Because you're putting yourself through kind of the grinder there for, you know, I mean, it worked out for this event, but do you think maybe if you just played easier teams?
You know, you're beginning to sound like some of my friends, and I don't like it.
Oh, my bad.
Like when I brought Galarian Moltres to Worlds, and they were all like, "You can definitely win games with this team, but I feel like you're working really hard." Well, I mean, I can, so I want to.
Let
I
the
don't
record
know.
show that Sierra
Let the
was
record show.
close to being Toler's friend, and Toler just had to back out. He was like, "No, you sound like my friend. No, can't have this."
Well, I'm getting away from this. I feel like that's a gross misinterpretation. I don't think I've said this to them too, right? My goal is to win the World Championships. My goal is every year that I compete, to try and win the World Championships. And to that end, like, if I think that the best stuff that I could play is hard to play, then I have to learn to play it anyway, right? And like, it's not like good teams are all easy, especially at the high levels. Like, if you think about, for example, Marco Himenta Caldera Silva, who won in LAIC this past fall and is like a crazy good player. He's been playing this Roaring Moon Balance team with Raging Bolt. That team is really hard to play. You have to make a lot of very, very essential decisions that are like anticipating board states 3 or 4 turns in advance, and it's a very good team. And there are lots of teams that, like Wolf's team that he won Charlotte with, even at the time, very hard to play. And he just put out a video explaining how hard to play it was in finals. And it's like very positional and lots of forward planning, all the sorts of stuff that you have to do with that team. So it's like, on one hand, yeah, maybe if I could find teams that sort of like I can just make a few reads and win the game, I would be better off. But I'm playing the long game here, right? Like, I want to build skills, and I believe Pokemon is a game about skills that you can build, like any other competitive game. And I want to build those skills and have higher chances of winning future tournaments. And how am I going to be a better player if I don't challenge myself, right?
Respectable.
I do want to ask you about your team in Knoxville, though. If we run through Tornadus, Raging Bolt, Incineroar, Urshifu, Single Strike, Ogerpon Wellspring, and then the Golden Go, of course, which was just so important on your run. Of those 6, I feel like every VG player has this, where you have a team and you're like, oh, this tech move is going to be great, or this option or this EV spread is going to really help me out. And then in the middle of your Swiss turns, you're like, man, I wish I had this attack instead, right? Like the classic Thunderbolt Power Gen Perish song on Specs Fluttermane, right? So of those 6 Pokemon, were there any moves that, looking back, like obviously it worked out because you won, like looking back, like I wish I had X move instead on one of these Pokemon? And then if there was any other Pokemon you were trying out on your team, what was that 7th Pokemon in the team builder that almost made the cut, but correctly you chose to keep off the team?
Correctly or not, I mean, you never know. Okay, so the move that I talked about after the tournament that I would have preferred to have I didn't bring Raging Bolt very much at all. It was kind of a matchup mon for me, and the reason I didn't bring it was because all his moves are so inaccurate. Like, I'm inviting myself to lose to what? It's really slow, and its moves are all really inaccurate. So, like, not only am I inviting myself to get crit or special attack dropped or frozen or like burned, or, all those sorts of things that happen when you bring slow Pokemon and don't have a way to go before the opponent. Not only am I inviting myself to get unlucky, I'm also inviting myself to get unlucky by like just missing Snarl and missing Draco Meteor, and that doesn't feel very good.
Yeah.
So I was generally trying to pick up game plans without Raging Bolt, but I did feel after the tournament that I probably would have been better off with Electro Web rather than Snarl. I think Snarl was better than Terra Fairy Terra Blast, which is what Eduardo Cunha was on, and it's like, as people should know, like this 6 was decided on after we saw his 6. And I mean, the big difference is being like Modest Tornadus, because I don't think he was modest. Modest Tornadus and Adamant Incineroar and Metal Coat Golden Go and like doing all the extra damage. And Snarl Bolt, but I kind of wish I was Webs so that I could get Golden Go going more easily.
Fair.
And then, like, as far as the 7th Pokemon, some people know this about me, not many people know this about me. In Reg E, when I was taking my break and just playing like some locals and stuff, I brought Clefairy Dango to like every local that I attended. So I have a lot of like I have a lot of Golden Go chops from just playing that team a lot and helping other people prep that team for tournaments. So 7th Mon, of course, is Clefairy. PP all the way.
Nice.
Metronome, all that sort of stuff.
The Metronome gaming.
Yeah, right. I wish I could have done it, but I was big on this like Icy Wind, Follow Me Clefairy, and making the Golden Go just impossible to KO, even though it didn't have leftovers. So I was used to Metal Coat as well. So like some of the choices on this Knoxville team were inspired by the work that I did on a similar difficult team in Reggie.
Practicing, leveling up.
Yeah, I was like, if Golden Go is playable, which it will be because it's absolutely busted, then I will be really glad to have had this practice.
There you go. It worked out. It worked out here. I think, though, the biggest decision of your regional run didn't come during the run. It's actually afterwards when you won the event and they're taking your picture for your regional pose that gets used on every single graphic for the rest of the year. And yours is the most unique by far. It's so funny because it's the progression of everybody with the esports pose and they have their hands crossed and they're switching hand.
Yeah.
And then we're gradually branching out. And there you are, hand over the shoulder, like. So did you just like straight up go up to the photographers and you're like, this is what I want to do, this is the winner? Like, how did this come about? Yeah,
in typical Toler fashion. This was actually at Charlotte. After the stream, they were like, hey, have we taken your photo this year? And I was like, oh, I mean, no, but you have my one from Orlando, do you want to just use? And that was the gamer pose, that was like this with my navy pullover on, and like, it was from Orlando, it was the first tournament back, all that sort of stuff. And I was like, do you want to just use that? And they're like, yeah, I guess we can. And so I walked off stage. And then, because this is right after I lost to Brendan Zhang, it's like, you probably don't need me. I'm going to go focus on preparing for my round 9 or whatever. And then they were like, actually, wait. We would like to get a new photo. And so they pulled me back. And I was like, okay, do you all need the gamer pose? Or like, should I do something different? Like, what's your preference? And they sort of said, well, you should have your arms crossed and all. And then someone else came up and was like, actually, he doesn't need to do that. Do you have any good ideas for something else that you would do? And I was like, I can? So I was essentially just like, I'll just do whatever they tell me to do. And then they were like, well, you could do something. I was like, what if I just like scratched my head? Because I feel uncertain all the time. I feel like that's a good character pose for me. And
you have luscious hair.
The luscious locks, which I'm getting cut on Saturday. It's really long. I'm sorry.
The look on Joe Brown's face when you said you're getting your hair
character
cut.
Don't get it cut too short. Not too short.
No, I never do. I've never gotten like my hair buzzed or anything. I can't stand it because I feel like it's who I am. But yeah, it was just a sort of spur of the moment, like, I want to do something different, and I feel like this epitomizes who I am, which is my head and my hair all the time, or my hands and my hair all the time.
Did you get to see the picture after, or was the first time seeing it after you won Knoxville then?
It was 100% after I won Knoxville. I was like, I sure hope that was a good picture. They said after, like, oh, that's pretty cool. This looks pretty nice. And I was like, great. And they didn't show it to me. Because of course they were working.
Yeah.
So the first time I saw it was at Knoxville. I was actually in Charlotte. I was trying to like get to top 4 so that maybe I could see the picture so I could know if it was good or not.
No, that's the goal. You're like, I just
Like,
need to.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Well, I'm not
The
winning any
secret
regionals, right? So I just need to get to top 4 so maybe I could see a picture.
That was the secret motivation all along. Even if you didn't know it, you're just like, I have to win the event. I need to know what that damn picture looks like.
That's right. No, I had no idea. Well, actually, I hate the way I look. Being like totally honest, I have always hated the way I look. I don't know why it's that way. So I don't take selfies. I don't like posting pictures. I'm better at it now since I'm 26, right? It doesn't matter. I'm an old man. Compared to who I was. But when you're a teenager, you're really self-conscious. So I'm really used to like avoiding any photo of myself that could possibly exist. So it was weird to be like, well, I'm kind of curious about how that one turned out.
So
are you happy with how it turned out? Because like you broke the gamer pose meta for that one.
That was the plan, you know? Just kidding. There was no plan. But I'm happy that I broke the meta. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like you've like obviously Alex Underhill had like just the finger or something, but like you completely broke open
his was cool,
the photography metagame, but you also broke open the metagame as the first person to bring 2 Incineroars to the finals. I was wondering if you saw those memes, right? Because obviously we talked about it last week. And it's just funny. It's funny when you see the memes, everyone's like, new meta, Wicked Blow, Incineroar. Like, you obviously saw that after you're done playing, but like, do you ever, when you're on stage, like, think about those cameras and think about the graphics and a double Incineroar on your team and people were tagging you, oh, Toler's so cracked, he brought 2 Incineroars.
Well, okay. I'm big on this, and I might be... I'm more strict than a lot of players are, and probably because I'm older. Than a lot of players happen to be. I do not bring my phone on stage. I despise the principle of it. I leave it in my bag, far away from me. I want my phone as far from me as I can have it during a tournament. So I had no idea that the graphics were like, you know, that anything was wrong. And to the first part, like the serious part of your question is, am I thinking about it? Absolutely. Right. And I'm trying not to think about it. The pressure of like feeling like, well, people are going to watch me play. I don't want to mess up. But at the same time, because I'm on stream, I know that I'm going to be more nervous and I'm more likely to mess up. Like people are going to see my mistakes. I'm going to have to deal with that later. And it gets better the more you do it because you realize that no one really cares. They just want to watch the game and they'll analyze it if they're, you know, Mikhail Couch, but like no one else is really like, no one else knows how much you messed up as much as you do.
Yeah.
But to the funny part of the question, right? That was all that I got in my Twitter notifications after my win. It really humbled me a little bit. It was like no one really cares that I won the tournament, which is good, by the way. I don't care that I won the tournament in some senses, but everyone cares that I had my 2 Incineroar team, which honestly I would have vastly preferred 2 Urshifus to 2 Incineroars. If I had to play 2 Incineroars on that team, I absolutely would not have won the tournament. It would have been terrible, even if it was Wicked Blow focused.
Even Wicked Blow Incineroar?
It would have been bad.
Oh
I needed that fast Unseen Fist Urshifu. Actually, it was Wicked Blow Unseen Fist Incineroar, so maybe there's a chance.
I think it's so interesting that you're talking too of like, don't have the intention of winning, like you're just kind of like want people to pass by it. Like that's so interesting because like others too, like they win, they get this big result, and it's like the shouting it to the world, right? Especially too if you're yourself, like that's the first like regional size event that you've won in the past 8 years, right? Like that was the moment too where, because you were saying like, will I do this again? And you did it again. And the tournaments nowadays are huge. Like these are really big deals. And you're like, no, I don't want people to give me this attention.
Yeah, I guess I don't want it to be about winning or losing the tournament. This is sort of the paradoxical thing about becoming a better player. And I noticed this, so maybe I'm projecting a little bit on how Wolf was talking on the last podcast. But like for him, he was talking about this idea of like taking the game one game at a time, like playing for the game that was in front of him. And I think paradoxically, the way to play better, the way to be a better player at the game is to not worry about how good of a player you are. And I've been telling this to a lot of people, is like, especially a lot of new players get really trussed up in results. And they're really worried about the fact that they aren't getting, the tournament placings they want. They aren't getting the CP they want. They're not close enough to day 2. Making all these mistakes, right? Like, the way you get better at the game is focusing on getting better at the game, not on whether someone gave you a prize. And so you get in these situations where, at least where I feel like, the tournaments where I performed the best are the tournaments where I wasn't worried about performing well. Because that's not the point. The point of the tournament is to play good Pokemon, and like, I feel in a sense like that's the most important history to be making, is to do like a honor to the game that I've played for so long and has given me so much. And so the reason why I say like I don't really want people to care about me winning is like I don't think winning was the important part, right? Like, I think the good set I played against Luca Paz was like, that was really exciting for me. It's like I want people to notice the work that I put in and the plays that I make and the decisions that I make, and like the fruits of my efforts more than anything else. And whether or not I get, a trophy or a medal at the end, like I don't mind as much, aside from it helping me afford to go to Hawaii because I'm a grad student, and please God help me.
Well, I want to talk about my favorite part of you winning Knoxville. It was not the games, it's not your hair, it was not any of that. It was your answers, both in the lounge and after you won on stage. And you were thanking, the first person you thanked was your mom, both times. And I thought it was such a sweet moment. Like, even the callback to it on the main stage, because like I think there's so many parents that are unsung heroes in many of our trainers' journeys. And I think just even for myself, like when I was 5 and my mom got me and my brother like one copy of red, one copy of blue, and then one copy of gold, one copy of silver, right? All the way up until I think I was in college for Black and White 2. That was the first Pokemon game I ever bought myself, and I'd played every game. So if it wasn't for my mom, keeping that Pokemon love alive through all the years, like I wouldn't be here right now. And I think you touched on that so beautifully, and it's an aspect that, besides Senor Evans, which we see at all the events when he's there with James, we don't really get to see many of the parents or many of the people that help form this love of Pokemon. We don't give them the time to shine. So I think, my mom's a big fan of yours now, obviously, because you mentioned your mom. But when she was watching. So like I think that was a really like awesome, moment from you both times when you took the time to appreciate her for helping form that Pokemon love that you have.
Yeah, I guess that makes me want to ask Joe, like what was your experience growing up with that? Like, did your mom and dad play like an equal role, or was it like something special between you and your mom? Or
it wasn't necessarily like a special like thing between the two of us. Like, not, first of all, neither of them had any video game savvy. For example, my first console I got as a kid was a Nintendo 64, and my second one was a Super Nintendo, which doesn't make sense, right? Because Super Nintendo came out like 6 or 7 years before the N64.
That's
they
how
didn't
it goes,
know. They saw it on the shelf,
and
it was great. But I think it was just like, it was something that other games we'd always have to try to, I don't know, like work for, like do chores for. Like if it was T for teen and I was 10, what's the rating or whatever. But whenever it was Pokemon, every time the game released, like she always got us one copy of each. She even got us 2 copies of Yellow, which is the same game. She didn't even have to do that, but she didn't know.
No one left behind there. Yeah,
because the first game was 2 different versions, right? So she didn't know. So I just think that's something I've always appreciated. Like growing up, was like I never would have had this connection to Pokemon because I didn't have the money. So I can't be alone in that appreciation. Is my feeling on it, right? Because so many other kids had to form that bond because of their parents being receptive to them playing Pokemon.
Someone decided that it was okay for this to be something you were interested in a sense. Like, when you get old enough, you can start deciding for yourself. But as far as like, I learned to read playing Pokemon, and that's because my mom bought Pokemon for me, right? And I think the really hard parts of this, and I'm going to try to phrase this well. So it makes me angry at myself that I haven't thank my mom more aggressively in the past, because it was one-sided with my parents, and my dad would argue, so don't show him this podcast. But it was one-sided with my parents. My mom, I showed her that I passed the quiz. You don't even know what the quiz was. There was a quiz that you had to take to qualify to play in the video game showdown in New York in 2008. And this is how Aaron Zhang has seniority over me, because he lived in New York, so he could just go. And my mom was like, that's not real. You didn't take a quiz online and get entry into a Pokemon video game tournament. You cannot go and do that, which is good because I was going to bring Water Pulse Aggron. Even though I knew what all the moves did, I didn't know how to put things together. That wasn't going to work. But it was my mom in 2009 when I was like, okay, they're doing it again this year. It's real. Look, you can find the convention information. She was the one who flew with me to Philadelphia to go to the 2009 tournament with like Nick McCord casting while all the kids were at these tables with like, it was like setting their DSs down across from each other, right? My mom was the one who drove 12 hours with me to Indianapolis in 2010 to play in the Nationals Last Chance qualifier and give me the experience of losing in the last round of the Last Chance qualifier before I qualified for Nationals. It was my grandmother who passed recently, actually, who took me to 2011 regionals, but my mom was back on it for 2012, taking me actually to the regional. She said, look, you got to make top 4 or we're not going to Nationals again, because those 12 hours, I can't get those back. But like every single time it's my mom, right? She flew with me to Hawaii. She flew with me to Vancouver in 2013. She was paying for stuff when I didn't win things to pay for it. And it wasn't free. I mean, it's, she definitely wasn't the one making most of the money, and my dad refused to pay for any of it. So in a sense, right, like I wouldn't have gotten to love the game in the way that I most benefit from loving it without my mom. So it's more than just the games, although Joe, I totally I relate to that too, right? Like she was the one getting the game for me every time because she knew how important it was to me and how special it was.
Right.
But in a sense, like she gave me permission in a way to be the person that I was becoming. And that's something you can't get from a parent for free, and not everyone gets from a parent ever. So I owe her, an immense debt of gratitude, and every chance I get to shout her out, I hope I remember to, or at least if I make finals, she deserves all the credit, because I don't get the chance to become the expert of Pokemon that I am today, and I really feel like I am, whether or not I'm confident in showing it on stages. I don't get to become the person, the player that I am, without her support. So yeah,
that's very wholesome, honestly.
Just like the hair, it's very thick, very whole.
What does your mom think of your hair? Is your mom one of those let you breathe, or is she like, no, you need a haircut? What's your mom think of your hair?
No, okay. She's into very masculine men, and that's not entirely how I've played out. Like I have some of the family traits, like the big nose and the big ears and everything, and I have her hair, unfortunately, for everyone involved. But she's always been like, well, you could wear it shorter if you wanted, but I like it that long, she says, visibly cringing. So she's always been supportive.
This 180 of the wholesome, conversation to, my mom likes more masculine men. That's an insane pipeline.
She's the kind of person who's always dreamed of dating football players. So she probably sees Taylor Swift dating Travis Kelce. Is like, oh man, I'm so jealous.
This is the podcast now, as we're getting to know more about Toler's mom.
I'm so sorry.
I signed up.
No,
this is what you get with me. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I mean, going back to the wholesome part of that, that's super nice, especially to from you playing Pokemon and being involved in the community and competing at a young age. That's super, super nice to have, because for myself, I didn't start playing in person, like TCG, until it was like my job paying to take me to these events. Like I wouldn't have gotten that growing up. Like, because that's like a huge commitment. It's not like sports where it's nearby. It's not like extracurricular in schools. Like you even see now, like parents flying their kids all over the country, even out of country. Like that is next level commitment that I don't think really people who didn't actually play in seniors and stuff really like get to understand.
Yeah. And really a lot of the people that, you know, don't get to understand it because their parents refuse to do it, which I think is just sad. There are a lot of people that don't get to play Pokemon at a high level, sometimes ever. But often until they're in exactly the position you're describing, Sierra. Like when did you have, you know, the income to actually go to these tournaments? Like how long did it take?
It was a manager at my pizza place job type deal, you know.
Yeah.
Still living paycheck to paycheck, but LOL, we go out anyways, cause why not?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good. It's a good time. So I'm definitely glad that you're able to get that support.
I'm lucky, right? Or that I pay for myself now.
Yeah.
And
I would hope so at this
call
point.
your mom and be like, "Hey, mom, I was thinking of going to Indy in May. Do you got any extra cash?"
Yeah, I call her the week of, like, "Hey, mom, I know the flight's $1,000, but you know, can you please just spot me?" No, I do not do that. But she did. You know, it was a slow transition. She was like, "No, you're planning your own trips." Before I could pay for it, she's like, "You're planning your own trips. You're telling me what flights you're flying on." And then when I was taking the like long break between like 2017 and 2023, like that was because I was in college and I wasn't able to pay for myself, and I didn't want my mom paying for anything at that point because she'd made enough sacrifices for me to pay for tournaments. And I couldn't drive, so I wasn't. It was a great time to focus on college.
You're fair and actually do that uninterrupted for the most part. But I have the realest question. All right, the realest question of the podcast, the most important one.
Okay.
What is your mother's favorite Pokemon?
Ooh.
You know, she made there were other people's parents, the really committed parents, learned to play the game with their kids. And I love that for them. My mother explicitly tried to avoid remembering what anything was.
There's not any that she even says is like, "Oh, that one's kind of cute."
She just calls them all Pikachu.
Don't say that, Joe. Be honest. I think she likes. Well, I hesitate to say this because she's going to be like, "No, you're wrong." But she probably won't even be watching the pod. She won't watch this. She won't know what's going on. I think it's like Jigglypuff or Clefairy or like one of the little pink ones. She's like, "Oh, that one's cute." But it's usually a case-by-case basis. Like, it's like, "Oh, that plush is cute. When did you get that one?" She does not ask what it's called. That is against the rules. Don't know what it is. She's not learning to play the game. I still can't. But, you know, she'll be like, "Oh, that one's cute. I like that one." She might like Wailord because I like Wailord, but all my Wailord plushies that I would bring are too big to bring to tournaments or knockoff Wailords. So,
you need the.
Do you have him? Oh,
you need the little guy.
Okay. I do have this one.
Oh,
right
that
here.
one's also very cute.
He's
such a little guy.
Him. He's so little.
Yeah,
He's itty bitty. I don't want to lose him. But
he has like such big eyes for how little the Wailord is. It's so cute.
Tiny, yeah. He's really small.
I was really hoping like Sarah was like, "Oh, look what I have," and then Toler's gonna be like, "Hey, just like bring like the big one."
What I thought she was gonna pull out the $400 52-inch long Wailord.
I want that one, don't get me wrong, but my credit card and the size of my office both say no.
Those are also my problems, yeah.
That's fair.
The Piplup's already having to sit on the computer tower. My computer's really been slow today. It might be overheating. I don't know, but like it's the only place this Piplup can go.
Yeah.
And there's got another big Piplup.
So, what are your thoughts on the plushie metagame? Because it's definitely evolved over the years. I think, like, I started in 2014, right? So, I have 10 years experience here. Like, you'd either put your favorite Pokemon Or you'd put, like, if you had, let's say you had a Tyranitar on your team and you got a Tyranitar Plus, so you'd put the Tyranitar out there, right? But you see the stream now.
It's a great friend. It's very huggable.
Right. And so you see the streams now, and sometimes people have like 6 plushes, and sometimes they're not even Pokemon that are on their teams. So, like, how do you feel like the plush game has evolved? 'Cause I think people are doing too much now, personally, for my taste.
I had a little mental game I was trying to play last season where I brought Gothitelle to a lot of tournaments, and I kept bringing my Gothitelle plush and just plopping her on the table. Like, you want to deal with Gothitelle this round? It could be Gothitelle. I could be a Gothitelle player. And then I, of course, didn't have Gothitelle. So I definitely tried a little bit of like mind gaming with the Gothitelle sometimes. But realistically, I think it's settling into a healthy, balanced metagame now where people just bring the Pokemon that they like. I like to bring my Swalot because people don't appreciate Swalot enough. Most people don't even remember what it's called. So I like to bring
true.
And then Casey, my girlfriend, got Acefiel at Knoxville and told me I had to bring it on stream or else because it's
Oh,
Feels
she
a
has a
good
good
one.
taste in favorite Pokemon.
Yeah.
Feels a top tier one.
It is round and blue, so I figure it's
Yes.
also one of your favorites, Sierra. So
It is up there for Pokemon I like. It's actually Joe Ugarte's favorite Pokemon because of the round and blue. So then it's a little extra special in my heart for that reason.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
What's your favorite
Yes.
then?
It's like a 4-way tie between Mew, Piplup, Slitherwing, and I forget which I feel Bulbasaur. Yeah.
Well,
Slitherwing
if you
is a good
forgot
one.
about Bulbasaur, I don't think it's in contention. That's all. That's all.
Because if you have so many favorites, you're ultimately gonna forget. Like if you have 10 kids, you're gonna forget one of their names. Like
See, and which one, if you were sat down on stream in top 8, which one would you want to have next to you?
oh, I would pull out like the giant Piplup plushie because I want it to be everyone's problem.
Okay, I see. That's the important. I thought you were going to say Slitherwing.
I think
Genuinely. We don't
have
Slithering
one
was going
yet.
to come out. Yeah.
If you had a 4-foot-long Slitherwing plush, would
Oh,
that have been one?
that one. Yeah.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
It's about inconveniencing everyone and also Slithering.
Yeah,
I'm
the
just
biggest
saying.
plushie I can get away with.
I'm just saying that Bulbasaur's not in contention for your favorite because it took a little too long to remember that it was your favorite. I think Mew is great, Piplup's great, so like that's a solid top 3. You don't need to throw Bulbasaur in there for no reason.
Yeah.
It's not throwing it in there. I still haven't been able to bring it home because it is too large to take on a carry-on, but I have like a giant Bulbasaur plushie that is at Joe Ugarte's house just waiting for me like to be brought home.
Just waiting.
I also got like the opposite end of like the tiny little one,
It's a
you
good
know.
little friend. It's a little-
He's such a good little friend. So
yeah.
the Bulbasaur. It's just like Bulbasaur has kind of been a long-standing favorite, whereas like something like a Slitherwing is a newer favorite. And I'm known for the other favorites. People know my Piplups. They know that
Mhm.
Slitherwing. You know, nobody knows about Bulbasaur. So
Well, Joe, I like the ethos of your comment because as I tell this to some of the people I work with, like deciding on a team for an event is about eliminating options. So I think Sierra could work to eliminate some options here and figure out what her number 1 favorite is, rather than having this like 4-way tie. Frankly,
there's over 1,000 Pokemon.
they don't all need to compete for. You can
They
have
can't
a
all
top
be
10.
first.
You can have a top 10.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's a top 10. I just don't know what order to order them in. Unless
Have you
it
ever
gets more
taken
decisive as I go down.
Have you ever taken those things online where they have all the Pokemon and it's like this, like Luxray versus Milotic, and then like you choose which one you like more, and like by the time you end through and cycle through all the Pokemon, it chooses your order of your favorite Pokemon, like your top 30 Pokemon or something. Have you ever done that, Sierra? It's very
That's
helpful.
what I have to do after this.
It is actually
That
very
sounds
helpful
freaking
because when like the easy things, it's like, oh wow, Magikarp versus Charizard. Obviously, I like Charizard. Like that's easy. It's when you get to those later ends.
Joe,
come on.
Why is that your obvious example? Everyone likes Magikarp more than Charizard. I don't know what you're talking about.
Anyway, whatever. Like
Okay. I might have an unpopular opinion.
The earlier ones are easy. It's when you get to those, say, final 30, 20, 15 Pokemon, and like, for example, some of my favorite Pokemon are like Sylveon, and then like I like Sylveon and Jolteon pretty much equally, right? They're my two favorite evolutions. So if I had Jolteon versus Ninjask, I knew Jolteon was going to be my choice. But if I'm in my top 10 and I have Jolteon versus Sylveon, that's a really tough question for me, and it helps me solidify and form my rankings.
So,
see, I cannot, first off, pick between those ones.
Yeah.
Second, you're like, Sierra can't have 4 favorites out of 1,000 or whatever, but I'm allowed to have 2 favorite evolutions out of the handful of evolutions there is.
Joe, what is your number 1 favorite? What is your number 1 favorite?
This is breaking news, because ever since Diamond and Pearl...
You better not say 2 Pokemon.
No, ever since Diamond and Pearl, Lucario has been my favorite Pokemon. But a lot of times I just don't mention it because I watched the Lucario and the Mystery... Right, so that's the thing. I watched the Lucario and the Mystery of the Mew movie, and then I got the Riolu hatch from the egg in the game, so I just love Lucario. But the common retort is also mainstream. I might as well like Charizard. I might as well like Pikachu, right? Mm-hmm. And the other thing is there's quite a connotation of Lucario on the internet. We don't have to go in there, but there's quite a connotation.
That. Anyway,
and so that is why I don't often bring up why Lucario is my favorite Pokemon, because of that connotation. So breaking news, I am officially changing. My favorite Pokemon is Keldeo. Keldeo's been my Discord icon since like 2016. Keldeo I had the plush sitting with me as I was playing in Charlotte. So for going on now, if anyone asks me, if you get a trivia question, who is Joe Brown's favorite Pokemon, we are changing it from Lucario to Keldeo.
Another basic Pokemon.
Yeah,
go on.
Get out of here.
Pretty average.
Miss Mew, Piplup, Bulbasaur over here talking about Keldeo being basic. Okay, I'll play along.
I didn't say they weren't.
Yeah. The thing was, Joe, that you said that you were moving off of Lucario because it was mainstream, and then you moved to a only slightly less mainstream.
Keldeo's was legal in VGC for a month and a half, and it's 15 years of existence.
It's not about mainstream. It's about the product, and Keldeo, it gets a lot of attention. Let's be real. I mean, come on.
You're killing me. Also, the other thing that sucked, to answer your Sylveon versus Jolteon, is I would say Sylveon, and Sylveon was my second favorite Pokemon, but I could never mention Lucario because of the internet, and I could never mention Sylveon because of Rosemary.
My God.
Right? So my 2 favorite Pokemon, I just had no claim to, so that's why we're moving on to Keldeo.
All you have to do is buy a bigger plushie. Like Aaron Zhang's favorite's Piplup. You know what I did? I bought a bigger Piplup. I bought more Piplups. I have more Piplups than him, so I now have the claim.
200,000 YouTube subscribers, like Aaron's saying. So I don't know how you're affording it. You know,
I don't think there's a life-size Keldeo. I don't think there's a 4-foot Keldeo plush out there.
You know, if you really liked Keldeo, you would sell it.
I would make it.
You'd make it work. People,
you admit it yourself.
People do those commissions.
That's fair.
You can pay someone to do it. Yeah, to do it themselves. Yeah, yep.
That's fair.
Yep.
And we're being so rude all of this time talking about our favorites, but we have a guest on. I need the Toler list.
Give us hints. I want us to give us a generation.
I'm looking for someone else to roast.
I want hints.
Yeah, well, I'm perfectly fine getting my favorites are all stupid, so it's fine.
Perfect.
So we can start here
with the Swalot.
He's like a top 5.
Okay.
I
Fifth
love.
Place.
Yeah, well, I think he's like 3rd. So my top 3 is like Swalot, then Shuckle, then Wailord. I'm a big Dragonite fan. I'm a big Politoed fan. So those probably also make it to the top 10. I won a national with Politoed. I can't dislike it.
It wasn't a Politoed.
It was a Dragonite. It's the really basic Dragonite. But everyone should like Dragonite. It's round. It's friend-shaped. Everyone.
He ugly.
He is friend-shaped. He is.
You want me to come back on this podcast? I guess I don't have to for a while, so I can forget.
Dude, Sierra is the most insulting Pokemon fan. Like, she just roasts certain Pokemon that she doesn't like. It's very hurtful.
You have Dratini, you have Dragonair, and
they're beautiful, right? They're very elegant.
And then it's like, Dragonite. Like, where'd that come from? I'd be so okay if like Dragonite was like part of a different evolution chain.
Sure.
But when you have these
Sure.
elegant
It's very
sky
jarring.
snakes,
It's very
yeah.
I did have that experience in Gold and Silver. I was like, Dratini, Dragonite. Am I gonna get like a cool serpent final evolution? It's like, oh
Yeah.
no, you're not.
You just have big derpy dragon.
But I love
You know?
how derpy he is, and I also like the round ones, the stupid looking round ones. So that is
Stupid round ones.
That is one of my faults. I will always be loyal also to Feraligatr because it was my first starter Pokemon, my first partner Pokemon.
That's a good answer. Everybody loves Feraligatr.
Yeah, that's
if you could
kind
use
but
him
like
in VGC, how would you do it? How could you make Feraligatr VGC viable?
Oh no.
There's only one way to do that, right? Like this is kind of a moot question. Is it like a trick question or?
No, I don't know. I'm asking you. He's your favorite. Yeah.
So Feraligatr, well, he's one of them. I mean, he's one of like the top 10, but he has Sheer Force, right? So you do Waterfall with Sheer Force and Life Orb, and you use it like it's a Lando Eye, and then you also have Ice Fang with Sheer Force, so like, or Ice Punch. Even I think it might get that now. So you have like nice, moderately strong moves coming off of. I hope I'm gonna look this up and make sure I'm not. It hasn't changed or anything.
Or else you're gonna be called a fake fan.
Yeah, it's like why
fake
would I?
Feraligatr fan.
Cool.
Feraligatr 101 is gonna comment and be like, actually, Toler.
I think at one point it got Dragon Dance, and that's kind of cool. But I mean, like the core thing would be like Waterfall, Aqua Jet, Ice Fang, and Protect with Sheer Force, and like it kind of hurts. But
you already
really
have your World's Invite. I'm just saying, like, just roll up to another regional with Feraligatr.
I did get a coaching request recently to help someone build a Blastoise team, so I'm warming up to it.
Okay, let's go. I mean, I'm just saying, like, if you can play funky stuff for the rest of the year, I'm like Slitherwing still cooks. I mean, took a Reg C Slitherwing team, was bodying people on ladder with it. First impression actually one hit KOs Water Ogerpon.
It's also just like nothing to Flutter Mane, which is sad. But I bet it does. It does one shot Water.
No, you Terrafire Flare Blitz. Flutter Mane drops.
No, the first impression doesn't, because the Flutter Mane is, But don't. Terrafire Slithering is a real threat. It's just like the problem is once you know what it's doing, it gets a lot easier to beat. Like it definitely can knock out Pokemon really easily, and it's awesome for that. It's like a huge offensive threat. It's definitely better than Feraligatr. But like once you know that they're just going to click Terrafire, Flare Blitz in your Flutter Mane, once you know they're going to first impression your Ogerpon.
That's why you have 5 other Pokemon.
Well, if I need my 5 other Pokemon, then why not just play a better 6? Like
no, because it's cooking. Because it's like it's not quite like a micro scam. It's kind of like a big scam. Like one of those ones.
Every move you make, every good move you make with Slithering is a scam, which is not a good sign. There's also the fundamental issue of if you don't Terra, you get one shot by Bleakwind Storm. That's pretty bad.
You actually just get one shot by anything if you don't Terra, which is kind of rough.
You don't get one shot by Surging Strikes.
Hey, if
very
Bleakwind
good
Storm
into
hits,
Dark Version,
which it's a little dicey. You missed the Bleakwind Storm. I got a little nervous for you too, Toler. You missed that Bleakwind Storm.
I missed a lot of Bleakwind Storms. I think Yotam has been very nervous about moves that miss. Because Riley played all those teams with 0 moves that could miss. And Yotam was like, actually, that's smart because I keep missing moves at regionals. I am a statistical physicist. I don't assume that the gambling is going to work out my way. I could double miss Bleakwind Storm 3 times in a row, and I recognize that and accept that fact. But I recognize that on average, Bleakwind is going to perform about average. And I think people should take that perspective with a lot of Pokemon stuff. It's like, on average, I'm going to hit 80% of my Bleakwind Storm attempts. And I should play the game assuming that I'm going to hit 80% of my Bleakwind attempts. Unless they've miscoded the game, that's how it's going to work. And against James, I think I hit 50% of my Bleakwind Storm attempts. But I played as if I was going to miss them anyway, and I made coverage options, and I ended up hitting attacks because I just kept going for stuff that could miss. So, it's sort of like, I don't assume that because I missed, the next one's going to hit, but I do try to play the game assuming that I can miss and set up positions such that like bleak windstorm hitting is a boon rather than a guarantee.
Good one. Nah, that's fair. That's fair. Anyways, I just looked at the time here.
Oh,
I feel a little bad. I know we've been firing off questions for the last part of things, but I feel like it's time to fire off our last question.
okay.
Our question of the week. So this one is coming out from Fendi. I feel like this will be cute answers all around. It's kind of like a twofer, so you can go about it either way. What was the moment that made you feel like you truly fell in love with VGC and the game? Or like when did you start feeling like you get how to like play the game?
Oh, those are two
I like the
very
first part of it
different things.
better. I like the first one better,
Okay,
but
yeah. Do you want me to go first, or I'm more than happy to let Joe fire away on the answer to this one first, and give myself more time to think.
well, if you need more time to think, then I'll throw Joe Brown under the bus here.
All right.
So
That's fine.
that's
So,
all you had to say.
flashback. Philadelphia, 2014. A young college senior, Joe Brown, trying to make it in the world, going to his first ever Pokemon event, thinks he's going to be world champion like he's Justin Tang, but he doesn't even know who Justin Tang is in 2014. So that was my first event. I went to school in New Haven, so I was in college, and I took a train back down to Jersey and drove with my brother down to Philly. And if you remember back then, Toler, tournaments were organized, but they were less than organized, and the start times were
Well, I mean, you said
start times were a suggestion at the very best, because if events were starting at 9 a.m., Philadelphia Regionals did not start until 1 p.m. almost. So it took almost 4 hours for round one to start at my first event. So it was a bad time. So I was in a bad mental state. Like I played against a Mega Kangaskhan in a rain team, and the Kang had thunder, so he was just trying to like have two chances at paralysis
Yeah,
and
they
stuff.
did.
Like,
Yeah,
and
they did.
Toler's proud of that one. So like I drove all the way down. Like I want to be Ash Ketchum. I want to be the best. And I wasn't having a great time. But we get to round 6. And I'm 2-3 at this point. If I lose this match, my mental's over. I never play Pokemon again. I'm never gonna be on the stage. I never meet Sierra. We never have this podcast. This conversation is not happening. But luckily, we're in the butterfly effect of what happened. I played against some opponent. He was a nice guy. He had like a team T-shirt, because back in the day, people used to wear like their like group, things. So they'd get like custom T-shirts. They'd be made off of a certain Pokemon or whatever.
I had like 3 of them. Yeah.
Exactly, right. So that was the culture back then. You and your friends all had team T-shirts made. So I'm like, this guy's a real deal because he's got a shirt, And he had a Haunch Crow was like his crush. That like the Haunch Crow was his linchpin, his success. His winning hinged on if Haunch Crow popped off or not. And this is best of 1. This is 2014 X and Y. And in that game, all I had left, it was Haunch Crow something else versus just my Rotom Wash. And every turn that he either sucker punched or knocked off or whatever, I always called the correct play. Every turn he suckered, I clicked Will-O-Wisp and burned it. Every turn he went for like a regular normal attack, I protected or went for a regular attack. Like it was like 6 turns in a row that I had to call the sucker punch. This dude was livid. And so I KO'd the other thing as Haunch Crow was essentially never attacking. And I KO'd his partner, and Haunch Crow went down to burn in the end. And I won with like a no health Rotom. And it was the greatest moment of my life. And I went 3-3, signed that match list. He just walked away without saying anything. And I dropped at 3-3, and I went back home. I went back up to college because I had like a 5-hour trip to get back to school. Because it was like
it was dropped.
I didn't
It's
know.
It's like pulling in front of someone on the freeway and slowing down. How could you do that?
Because it was getting late. I had to get back to school. I had school the next day. So in that moment, when I won that Haunch Crow Rotom Wash Sucker Punch Mind game, that was when I fell in love. I was like, I want to play VGC, and I want to play Pokemon for the rest of my life. And I fully invested in watching videos and watching guys and like going to locals at that point, which I had never done. And that was that. If Rotom Wash doesn't win that, and I go 2-4 and I drop and I'm super mad, like I'm not here right now. But luckily it did, and I fell in love.
Little
I'm glad
Washington.
that you could recognize that you're a Salt Lord that would not be in this position had you just lost that game.
I'm not gonna lie to you. Absolutely, I would not be here. Sierra would be hosting with somebody else right now.
That's so funny. I have the opposite
goodness.
answer. Actually, but it's like not when I fell in love with the game, but I think I mentioned this on broadcast. Actually, it's like my first tournament was in 2009 with Nick McCord. I mentioned that in this podcast. I lost that tournament in the third round to someone who was objectively more well prepared than me. They had Fly Salamence and Explosion Metagross. They clicked Fly Explosion turn 1. Both my Pokemon died, and then what do? The Salamence is coming back down. I walked out of that tournament. I was 12, I think. I walked out of it older than all of the other juniors, like 11 or 12. Yeah, I was about to be 12, and I was 11. I walked out of the tournament crying, snot flowing out of my nose. I could not stand how sad I was to have lost. I was like, this is my one chance to get to play competitive Pokemon, and I blew it. And I didn't even understand what I was doing. I didn't know what EVs were. I didn't know what IVs were. Like, I didn't know anything. I was 1 year separate from Water Pulse Aggron. Like, got some dark days behind me. But it was like that tournament. I was like, I gotta go back. I gotta try again. That was I can't. I have big I can't end on a loss mentality problems. So it's because I lost, and because I lost in 2011 too. I got to round 2 of the Chantilly Regionals or whatever. I played Cedric Bernier. He absolutely crushed me, and I was like, man, I gotta do better next time. Then wait a year, because you have to wait a year between your tournaments at that point. And it's like in January of 2012, like, I should actually practice because I've lost twice, and I should probably try to get better. That was like
showed them
the sequence of losses what convinced me to come back. Which is why I'm never allowed in a casino ever.
Yeah,
never let me
that's
in.
fair.
Do not let me do that. But as far as Pokemon goes, it was okay. As far as my favorite moment, Pokemon-wise, it was when a friend of mine, Kazuki, made top 4 at Virginia Regionals in 2017 at his first event, and I felt like I'd actually like help someone do something that they were excited to do like that. But I said that on broadcast, like, yeah, that's a really special and important moment to me. But it wasn't when I fell in love with the game. I fell in love with the game when the game told me I didn't know how to play it, and I said, "Screw that."
Good one. It's a good one.
Sierra,
what about
you,
Sierra?
too. Yeah.
You want to go TCG angle here?
Yeah. So I'll keep it VG related because I do have an answer too. But obviously a little bit greener to this game, and it's funny because last week on the podcast I had talked about my match versus Wolf in the WBE, and that might actually be the catalyst to why I'm casting this game. Funny enough, because I didn't really play VGC before then. I had been asked by like my community and Twitch chat and stuff before to start playing it. And I didn't. I just didn't really care enough. And then when I got asked for the WBE and I started playing the matches, the game was so much more difficult than I thought to be picking up. And I was getting really frustrated and I sucked and I kept losing. And even then when I did start getting help, so obviously like my whole season turned around when Joseph Agarte started helping me and teaching me. But even though I was winning games, it was winning game plans he had laid out for me. We would build the team, we would talk about what we could realistically see, and it was very much so kind of replicating like what I was told. It's like one of those juniors that doesn't really understand. Right. They're just given a line and they're
click Trick Room and Choice Band Earthquake next to your the Oranguru, and then click Construct and like
do it again.
Yeah.
Do it again.
Still the best moment. That NASE finals is so hype. But yeah, I was just doing lines, and if there was a disruption to the line, I didn't know what to do, right? And then playing against Wolf, like I got so destroyed game 1. My line didn't work. He ally switched on me like 7 times in the end game. I got every single one of them wrong, and I was about to, and like this was to get into playoffs after like turning my season around, and I was ready to cry. I was so upset, and I have it all on video too, which is so much fun. And then I was like, okay, like I actually have to take what I've been learning and do something different because this isn't working and I'm about to lose. Like the entire season's on my hands right now. And that's kind of when I realized like I actually really cared. Like I was like, I've actually been putting a lot of effort into this and I lost this first game and I'm so incredibly upset about it. And so then going on to the next 2 games, it wasn't so much more as lines as me playing the game. And it was far from perfect, and I definitely got lucky. Like I was playing Hustle Dracozolt, and I didn't miss a single move in my game 3. Like, yeah, you know those 80%. You know it was on my side that day. Yeah. But that was more so like when I actually had the confidence. Like, yo, I can actually play this, and then being able to see that I was learning how to play the game and was no longer just like kind of following lines. Was like really like, oh wow, like I actually do love this game. It's like that's what I wanted to make. Like that's what made me want to start playing more, start learning how to play more, and then kind of went down from there. So yeah.
The rest is history.
Thanks again, Wolf. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I play VGC and casting.
Pokemon is so hard. Like this game is like it seems like it should be so easy. Because you just make a few decisions each turn, and like there's no mechanical skill. You don't have to do anything hard. But your opponent also only has to do that, so you have to be like perfect, and it's so hard.
There's so much to it. Like with TCG, it's like
the
saying was a little bit more like not so podcast friendly, but it was like. Reading the card explains the card because essentially any interaction question that you have ever within TCG is explained on the card. You don't understand how the card works? Well, then reread it. Like the card will explain it. You know, sometimes there is really weird niches, but it's a far cry from VGC where it's like, okay, well now we have these damage calcs that you don't actually know. You need to know all your type matchups, which is oh my gosh, to learn. All the hidden mechanics in the game they don't tell you, like rain and sun and snow and all these other things, how they all influence the game, all these strains. Like there's so much that doesn't get explained. And then even if someone wants to hop in to learn the game, they have to learn all that. Even if you're playing at a high level, you have to remember absolutely everything.
It's like you know all of that stuff, and that's the starting line. Like, the game is really hard after that point, even, which is just insane.
You learn the stuff, it doesn't get easier.
Yeah, no, it's like okay, I can process the fact that rain is going to reduce my Flare Blitz damage, but that doesn't mean like I don't have to consider the possibility of maybe still having to go for Flare Blitz, predicting Ferrothorn coming in. But if I do, then I'm going to take some damage. And if I take the damage, how much damage am I going to take? Is it going to be like enough that my Incineroar just fades? Like, oh, well, I can't just do that. But maybe it's okay if Incineroar fades. You do all of this within like 45 seconds. It's terrible.
Yeah,
terrible.
Yeah.
And also, like, I'm not gonna sit here and lie and act like every single time I see a flying type and steel type on the board together, I have to ask myself again which way it works, right? It's like, wait, does flying resist steel? Because, like, you can't put a sword up in the sky until you hit a bird. Or, like, there's a bird that resists steel because if they run into a building. Like, every time I'm like, wait, what if they, like, both resist each other? Because it, like, kind of
mine are the ghost resistors. Yeah.
Yeah,
the ghost
one's hard.
And then like bug or fairy resisting bug for absolutely no reason, as if bug is not bad enough. Like now it's bad into fairy.
This is like one of those things. It's like, why should Fluttermane quad resist first impression? But I know that offhand. Like, why can't I have this level of memorization when it comes to my PhD? Like, come on, guys. Just, like, give me a chance, right?
I did want to say, though, my favorite...
Dual typings and all those matchups. Oh, my God.
My favorite part about Sierra beating Wolf, because I went back and watched the VOD. We were making, social clips and stuff. Is not the match. That's what I watched. Yes, Dracozolt will pop off. It's the beginning of the video when Wolf first goes, hey guys, everyone. And I'm playing Sierra this week, and my opponent is running late. And I was just like, oh, Wolf, brother, I get you. It's been 4 years.
Oh, no.
It's been 4 years, and Sierra's still running late.
I try.
It was just the thing, just like record. So my opponent's running late. I'm like, been there, brother.
All right, I probably need to go to sleep, guys.
Yeah. That was sorry. We've kept you for so much longer than we meant to. We said we would talk about half an episode. You've basically been here for a full one.
You know, I'm like the old man on the porch, right? Like, if you just get me going, I'll talk about the glory days as long as you want me to.
I love
it.
it.
It's like people are like, oh, I'm here because I won a regional this last 2 weekends ago. But like, I won a regional 2 weekends ago because I had played, 8 years before that. Like, come on, I'm old in Pokemon years.
I won't let Joe Brown get started about the good old days of Pokemon, because I know he is also old man on porch. We'll talk about it all day long. So let you get to bed. But thank you so much for joining us. And of course, for those who are watching, where can they best find you?
My Twitter account is the best option, at Dim Sunlight. Otherwise, I don't know. I really like analyzing matches, so I keep having this idea that I'm gonna make a YouTube channel and do match analysis, but I have my PH. Just talk to me on Twitter, at Dim Sunlight. That's it.
Well, if you ever shut that YouTube channel, then they can get there from your Twitter. So that's
hopefully, yeah.
There you go. But thanks again so much for joining us. And if you made it to this point in the podcast, thank you so much for listening. It's been a lot of fun. We hope you enjoyed. And yeah, we will see you all next week.